Let's be friends.
Have you not?
And here we go.
Mike's not muted. Mike is not muted. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing. Hope you all are having a good Saturday night. We are back live, and tonight, going to be starting possibly a new segment here on the Ambassadorial Wing called Ambassadors Arcade, where we look back at the benchmark, the landmark, the truly awesome either video games or video game consoles of the past. And tonight, we're going back to the early 2000s, to a time that was, at least in my opinion, peak for really extraordinary, awesome, excellent Star Wars video games. And tonight, of course, as the thumbnail and the title indicate, we are going to be discussing KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. As always, if this is your first visit to the Ambassadorial Wing, welcome. Hope you all enjoy the stream tonight. Hope you all have a good time. Whether I sent you a link and you want to join me and the rest of the panel here this evening, or you're in the chat, glad to have you all here, as always. And of course, if this is your first visit, make sure you smash that like button, share this out with all of your Star Wars friends, particularly those that are fans of good Star Wars video games or great Star Wars video games. Tell them that this is where the good conversations are at. This is where the fun conversations are at. Here we don't talk about all the other nonsense that takes place in other portions of the internet, on YouTube or wherever section of the internet that you're on this evening. And of course, everybody is watching, whether on YouTube or, and I will always call it Twitter or X, or whatever way you want to call it. Good to have you here tonight. And tonight, I'm not by myself. Tonight, I have a good friend of mine, a fellow Star Wars aficionado, a man who knows his lore, knows his stuff. It's been a while since he's been here, but glad to have him here. So give a very warm ambassadorial welcome to my friend and yours, Mr. Ace Moick.
How's
Ace,
it
good
going,
evening.
folks? I'm glad to be on here. Thank you for the invite, Ambassador.
Glad to have you here, Ace. So glad to... I know you and me, we've been talking about this for a little bit and everything else. And this has been something that's been kind of on my mind, and it's my birthday month. I just turned 45 on Thursday. So I was like, you know what? I want to look back a little bit. And these are a pair of games that, whether you're a Star Wars fan or not, but especially if you're a Star Wars fan, this is a pair of games that we all played, that we all loved, even though one was glitchy and buggy as hell. We loved these games. So
if you played the PC version,
I never played the PC version. I played the console versions of both. So
I had no problem with the console version. If I assume you're talking about KOTOR 2,
yeah, I am. And even though KOTOR 2 was buggy, I still loved it. It had a great story. It had a lot of great characters. Both is true. It's true of both games. This was a step in a big direction for Star Wars gaming. So, and I do want to say hello to the chat. Another good friend. Have not seen him in a while. Josh of Galactic Republic Gaming. Josh, good to see you, buddy. And thank you very much for the play birthday wish. I appreciate it. And well, Josh, you've been a mod and everything. I made you a mod the last time you were here, whenever that was anything, because it's been a while. But Josh, good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you being here tonight. For someone of my generation, well, and Aishu and I are, we're pretty close in age. I'm 45. You're what, in your late 30s?
I'm 31, actually.
Okay, you're early 30s. Okay, so you were still kind of you were still a little wet behind the ears when the original KOTOR came out.
I was about 10 or 11 years old when I came out. And when I never played an RPG before that. So I was so confused and I was just upset because, like, how do I play this game? But then when I later tried again with the game, so I heard so much great stuff about it, I was like, okay, stick with it longer. And I fell in love with the game.
You know, speaking for myself, we had. Josh, if you want to join, dude, by all means, join. I sent you the link. I have no problem you being here. So I don't
The
know what
YouTube link
the
is what he
idea.
means.
Huh?
The YouTube link is what he means, but I can send it to him on Instagram.
Oh, I
I'm
probably.
just doing a little promo.
Oh, okay. You're fine. Oh, I get you. All right. Got you, Josh. Sorry. My bad. I misread your message. Anyway, growing up as a kid of the 80s, Star Wars video gaming, it was kind of basic. You had the early Atari games, like Empire Strikes Back. You had the original Trench Runner for the first Star Wars. And then we got a little more advanced when we got the Super Nintendo. You had Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, Super Return of the Jedi, and so on. This was a quantum leap, even for the early 2000s. This came out on the original Xbox, and as you mentioned, Ace, on PC. I primarily played console games. That's how I always played. And when they announced this game, when the trailer for it came out, and I'm like, an RPG set in Star Wars. Just on the name of Star Wars, I was like, hell yes.
And now we don't really have anything like it, sadly, like in the new generation. Technically,
Not that. Go ahead, Ace.
I was just saying, because technically, Star Wars: The Old Republic is, still going, even though it's considered not part of the new continuity. And that's not a slam against new continuity. That's not a compliment either. I won't give my opinion on this stream, but
You're
uh,
fine, Ace.
but also, yeah. So there's really nothing in the quote unquote modern sense to compare it to of the new wave of games. Technically, the new Jedi games, but not only so much RPG elements.
Well, here's the thing. KOTOR and its sequel, they were the first true, except for, like tabletop RPG games, like you get your little figure, you got your dungeon master or wherever you got your game master and everything. That was the only Star Wars RPG that actually existed until BioWare came out and said, hey, we're going to do the first true Star Wars RPG video game. I had never played an RPG game myself, but I've been playing video games since I was a kid. So the amazing thing about the mechanics for this was they really streamlined how you set up your character and how you set up your other party characters. And they made it simple. It wasn't super complex so that somebody who had never played an RPG wouldn't be able to catch on and understand and do, and play something like this. But for everybody else that had played RPG games, it was pretty much they just took it and digitized the RPG format. You had your character sheet, which is of course your main character, which is of course, until we knew later, one of the greatest twists in the history of video gaming ever, that your main character was actually the main villain that everybody was talking about.
So. And for me, I gotta say that I think that's a twist that rivals what in 1980 was a big twist, the I am your father twist of Darth Vader being Luke's father. And frankly, I took the twist of, oh, you've been Revan the whole time. Like, I took that as a bigger shock than I am your father. But I blame that partially because I was a small child in the 90s and people were still parodying the I am your father lines. So thanks to cultural osmosis and The Empire Strikes Back being the very first Star Wars movie I ever saw, I already knew I am your father. And I just, it didn't strike me as, as shocking as someone who had saw the original film and then saw The Empire Strikes back in 1980.
I had, of course, seen the original trilogy. I knew about the twists, Vader being Luke's father, by obviously Leia's father as well. But yeah, the reveal by Malik there on his flagship that Revan is the character you've been playing the whole damn time. The first time I heard that, I was like, "Say what?
Yeah.
Can't is there any way I can rewind this?" Oh wait a minute, no, I can't. It's 2000s. I can't rewind my gameplay, unfortunately. So, and I do want to say hello to the chat real quick. Soul Assassin, it's good to see you, buddy. I appreciate you stopping in. He said, "Master, look up the channel Gamers. They did a history vid for the KOTOR game creation." I imagine it was one hell of a trip and everything for BioWare. And BioWare was a startup studio at the time. They hadn't really done anything yet. This was their claim to fame. And now, unfortunately, look what's happened to them. To quote the meme, "Look what they did to my boy."
Look how they massacred my boy.
Look how they massacred my boy. Just, it breaks your heart to see.
Like this.
But this, you had a massive game, at least for the time. I mean, early 2000s. This was a huge game. Both playthroughs took 80 hours if you did everything. Every side mission, everything.
Most I've done, I mean, the most mid-range or probably low range, like a speed run for myself speaking, would be 40 plus hours. So something like 40 and a half or something.
Me, I am a completist. I did everything. Absolutely, start to finish, every side quest.
The swoop races kind of lost me, like just because of how challenging they became. But I guess that just shows how bad I am at racing.
Well, that, and we had the card game Pazak. It wasn't Sabak, it was Pazak, but that was a lot of fun too. And
I think Sabak would have been hard to do in a game compared to Pazak, which is essentially blackjack in Star Wars, if you think about it.
Essentially, yeah, and everything. And it was a nice little side game that you could play while you were on Terrace or other worlds. I think you could play it on like Tatooine or whatever. And let's be honest here, they had a nice balance of planets that you knew and planets that we had never seen. I mean, okay, you had the Endar Spire where you started, then you had Terrace. From there, you had Dantooine and Korriban. Holy crap. The Sith homeworld.
Mm-hmm.
You had Kashyyyk. And you had Kashyyyk like we had never seen Kashyyyk before. I mean, it would be a few years before we would see Kashyyyk in all its glory in Revenge of the Sith. And we had Manon. We had Rakata Prime. And then, of course, you had the Starforge.
And of all those systems in the game, obviously the only one we ever see in live action prior to that was Tatooine. We did see Kashyyyk a couple years later in Revenge of the Sith, and in the original movie there was only mention of Dantooine. But other than that, the only ones to my memory that were mentioned were in the expanded universe. It was Kashyyyk at the time and Korriban. I mean, just Korriban, not Kashyyyk. Manon and Terrace were, I think, new for the game, along with Rakata Prime.
Yeah, completely brand spanking new. And the characters that you meet on your journey, I mean, what a cast. I mean, you've got an old curmudgeon Jedi, you've got a young Cathar female Jedi who's essentially a Padawan. You've got Master Vandar, who's another member of, granted, he's never a member of your party, but another member of Yoda's species. You've got Master Vrook, voiced by Ed Asner. I'm like, wait a minute. Is that Ed Asner?
That's Ed Asner. I didn't even realize that when I ever played the game.
I looked it up. I was like, that's Ed Asner.
That's something. I never knew that until you said it. It shows on the right hand.
It was Vrook, Vandar, and for heaven's sakes, I can't remember the other master, the Twi'lek one.
I want to say Master Boss, but I think I'm wrong. I might be thinking of one of the masters from KOTOR too.
It might be. But then, of course, we get introduced to a new we get introduced to our first Mandalorian character, that of course being Candace Ordo, an absolute badass,
Yeah.
and HK-47, everybody's favorite assassin droid.
Yeah, who I strongly believe they used as a partial basis for KTSO in Star Wars Rogue One.
Oh, if they didn't. Oh, thank you, Josh. Zar, Master Zar was the Twi'lek. That's
so I
it.
was wrong, but yeah, that sounds right. It's been a minute
Yeah,
since
it
I played
was.
KOTOR.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I played KOTOR. If I'm ever able to get my hands on a fully functional Gen 1 Xbox, I will definitely get KOTOR.
I still
So
got mine.
play.
Well, actually, just do you have a working tablet, whether it be Samsung or Apple or whatever?
Yeah, and I've actually tried to play that.
Oh, so you already know.
Yeah, I already know.
Okay.
The only problem is I can't remember all the little cheats and everything to actually get through certain parts of the game. I used to remember them backwards and forwards. Now I can't. So
I'll have to send you a link. I got a playlist of some of them.
So, and making his return also to the channel, give a very warm welcome to a face I have not seen in a while. Josh of Galactic Republic Gaming.
What's up, everyone?
Josh, I was good to see you, buddy.
I was kind of in the middle of eating dinner and watching, I think, Chapter 5 of The Mandalorian as when Ace sent the YouTube link. So,
which season?
Chapter 5. It's the first season, the 5th episode.
Okay, I forgot. Sorry, I haven't watched Mandalorian in a long while. I don't have Disney Plus anymore.
Yeah. But
I watched go ahead, Josh.
On topic of the stream, I've never actually watched or not watched, played the KOTOR games. I've watched videos of KOTOR 1 and a couple of KOTOR 2, but never actually played them.
Well, as long as you've seen them, that's an important thing.
If you ever get the opportunity, Josh, I know they're both on Steam, and I know they're relatively inexpensive. I would definitely encourage you. I know the graphics are extremely dated, but the story and the gameplay are absolutely worth your time.
You want to talk about dated graphics? Most of the games I play on my channel are over 10 years old.
And hey, there's nothing
10 years old. That's so dated.
And then
wow,
Battlefront 2 2005 turns 18 exactly a week after I turned 19. So,
yeah.
Dude, on my PS3 I have a digital copy of Star Wars Dark Forces, which is basically Star Wars Doom originally released on PC and PlayStation 1 in 1996. You were talking about old graphics. Oh, it's like I said, it's basically Star Wars Doom.
Yeah.
I mean, you know the character Kyle Katarn?
Yes, I do.
His very first appearance.
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay.
But I know the story behind Dark Forces. I've just never played it.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. I wish
I imagine
was available to play on anything but the PC because I don't have a good enough PC for gaming.
Soul Assassin's message.
Soul Assassin's good friend. He's been around for a long time and everything. I met him over on Orange Hat Reviews channel, so he's good people. He's a goon, but he's our goon and we love him. Let me go ahead, Josh.
Soul Assassin says Dark Forces is getting a re-release and upgrade. Wasn't KOTOR 1 supposed to be getting a remake too?
Yeah, KOTOR's getting a remake.
It's supposed to be, but everything's kind of been up in the air about KOTOR for the KOTOR remake for a little while now, but they might be getting their ship righted, and hopefully they're going to get it done.
We shall see.
I hope so. I would love to. I'm not gonna lie. Yes, am I gonna buy a copy of KOTOR 2 or KOTOR remake? You damn right. If they ever get their house in order and make the damn thing, I will buy it and I will play it.
I will play it on the condition of that it is still part of the expanded universe and they're not trying to recanonize it, because I fear what they would do to Revan's character if they brought him into the new continuity. And I just think leave him as he is. If it's literally just a graphical update and upgrading the the mechanics of the game, fine, I'll play it. But I know my mind will still be going to Disney and whatnot, but still.
The thing about that is, I'm pretty sure Disney announced someone's making a Revan movie along with the Rey one and the one that Dave Filoni is doing.
If it's from the Doomcock guy, not a credible source.
Yeah, Josh, don't take anything that you can't see the person's face. If you can't see the person's face, don't bother.
Yeah, especially if they use a what is it? A voice, distorter, and I think
no, it's not from any of those kinds of. It's from like I don't even know who that person is. You just said the name of, so
that's okay.
Idiot.
That's nicer than I would say, but sure.
I'm being tactful,
and I believe me, you're being more tactful than I would. So, but anyway, with the original KOTOR, the things that I loved about it, you had such a vast array of characters, and they had really good story arcs, character arcs especially. And if you worked hard enough, you could get through everybody's story arc before you get to Rakata Prime, or even before you get to the Starforge. And depending on here's the great thing, and I might be wrong on this, but this is the first time that I recall a game where your choices actually change the narrative of the story that you're playing through, of the game itself, because this game has two different endings. You have Revan elevating all the way to his pinnacle as a Jedi, or you have him returning to his former nature as a Dark Lord or as a Dark Jedi. As far as I know, there had not been another RPG video game that had done this, and it was something truly, at least from my perspective, truly extraordinary. Not to mention it doubled the gameplay. So
I remember when I was in high school, just sometimes playing KOTOR back to back, but also was on probation for like 3 to 6 months, so I didn't have much to do other than stay home and play games. But that's a whole other thing and a half.
But I'm pretty sure the Canderous is the greatest. I agree.
Same.
Canderous was a badass.
And he became Mandalore.
What was his name as Mandalore?
In KOTOR 2, he has become the new Mandalore, yes.
No, what was his title, though?
The Preserver, I believe. Preserver?
Yeah, he was Mandalore the Preserver. Yeah. Canderous Ordo of Clan Ordo, Mandalore the Preserver. And I think
that's from reading the Revan novel, which begged to be so much better.
Never read it.
It's one read is enough. Frankly, I think you would think the guy Drew Karpyshyn, who actually was the main story guy who was involved with the first KOTOR, would make a fantastic Revan novel. I mean, he made a fantastic Darth Bane trilogy, but I think the problem is he was told by the developers of the Old Republic, you only have time to make one book. I think if he had made 3 books and developed it better, it would have been great, because basically it's kind of an in between KOTOR 1 and 2, and also after 2 that leads to the events of the Old Republic. And like, not jumping too far ahead, but I think that Mitra Sutric was so wasted in that book. Like, she doesn't really show up to the second half, or maybe even the final third, and she just could have been, her character's wasted, and there's very little mention of some of the other characters from the first game, and I don't even think there's a single mention of Kreia, just from memory. I haven't read that book in years.
Isn't Mitra Surik technically who you're playing as in KOTOR 2?
Yes, the Exile. That's her name canonly, Mitra Sutric.
Surik.
The
Tomatoes.
it's funny because and we'll bounce around a little bit here. I remember playing, when I was playing KOTOR 2, there's different dialogue options, and you can say, well, no, Revan actually saved the Republic, and then, or you could say, no, Revan, and you can even say, no, Revan was a man, not a woman, or vice versa. And it also tailored how the other characters responded to you and everything during those conversations. That was another really cool mechanic, at least from my perspective, with the first KOTOR and the sequel, how your dialogue choices affected the overall structure and how the characters reacted to you. Like, you could have if you were a male Revan, you could have a love affair with Basila, you could have a love affair with Juhani, the Cathar.
For the furries out there.
Yes, for the furries out there. The only one I don't think you could ever have a love affair or a love story with and everything was Mission, because she was too young.
Yeah, thank the Force for that. Thank the Force.
She was like 14.
Yes. Yeah, Mission was too young. Revan was his maybe late 20s, early 30s, just by the look of his character, the design of his character. Well, depending on how you designed his character too, or her character.
I think everyone goes for the slicked back long hair version, and that's become that was the canon one in the expanded universe, and I think that's why so many people want Keanu Reeves to be a live action, because I think, oh, this looks like Keanu Reeves without the beard.
I don't want it to be Keanu.
I wouldn't mind if it was Keanu who was in the Revan movie if they did one.
Keanu's
Soul Assassin? No, he isn't. He's not by no means too old.
No, he's aged about as well as a Hollywood person can as Paul Rudd. Basically both age very little. Obviously, they're older than they look like when they're in their 20s, but not say too old to play certain characters.
Soul Assassin, I wasn't aware of that, to be honest with you, but I could have swore that you could have a love story. There was a love the love story arc that you could have with Juhani between Juhani and Revan. I could be wrong.
I don't think there was, actually.
I might be wrong on that one.
I think it depends on how you play the game and like how you have your character stats and whatnot, but I don't really recall it from my experiences. There seemed to be something that hinted at it, but I never pursued it because I always had Revan pursue Bastila. But I've seen, it could be from mods, but I've seen people have there be a relationship between Revan and Juhani, but I wonder, I question how legitimate they are. I think, was this just a mod or was it in-game the whole time? But I think it could possibly be in-game because there was actual voice acting, and this was before the AI voice acting, to my memory.
Yeah, I mean, I will say more often than not, when I played KOTOR, it was usually it was a male Revan, because, and now I did play it a few times as a female Revan just so I could get the other experiences, with Cartho Nassi and some of the other characters, see how they reacted to a female Revan. And I think that for me was kind of a oh yeah, we all know you would go for your Thurban, the Twi'lek on Korriban. No, she wasn't exactly my type. I wouldn't go for a Sith.
Also a tattooed Sith.
Now, the one thing I did do with her character, though, is I did get her to leave the Sith Academy there on Korriban. So that was the thing I did do with her character. And I did. You have to have a very high persuasion and a very high charisma to pull that off, because she's a high-ranking Sith in the Academy. But
very few playthroughs. Go on.
Part of me wonders if there's any relation between Euthuraban and Yadiraban, the Padawan from the Star Wars The Old Republic MMO game.
Possibly. I wouldn't be surprised.
Here's the interesting thing, Josh. They did link a few things between the original KOTOR games and SWOTOR, Star Wars: The Old
Yeah,
Republic. So
like
that's a
fa-
distinct possibility.
like Satil Shan being a descendant of Revan and Bastila.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was
And
like, um, I think she was like Basila's niece or something, maybe,
No, it would be like
or
a
granddaughter.
great. It would be like a great granddaughter because it's like 300 years later.
yeah,
Yeah, there'd be a few generations. So
yeah, and with what Soul Assassin said about Yatura Band, it actually reminded me of something to say when we were talking about the planets earlier. Someone actually discovered that there actually was a missing planet to the original KOTOR. You remember the conversation with Yatura Band, her backstory of how she grew up on Slaheron as a slave to the Hutts. Apparently, that was actually one planet they were actually developing for that game, but they didn't have time to finish, so they just deleted it. And it's the mods for it, it's not as popular or as known as the restored content mod for Knights of the Old Republic 2, but it exists.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that.
I only found that about that recently myself.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we got introduced to our first other besides, Coruscant, which we saw a few years prior to this game. We got introduced to another Megaopolis planet, that of course being Terrace, and really great, honestly, really great design for the planets,
Yeah.
But Terrace was a good look. It was a good. It was a nice little entry point plan for you to start out on, and a lot of good side quests and main quests.
Did they actually reference Coruscant at all in the KOTOR games?
They do on I think Dantooine. Someone asks about the. I think when you're before you become a full Padawan or learning at the temple, you ask. I thought the Jedi Temple was on Coruscant, and they say, well, it is mainly on Coruscant, but this is a Jedi enclave, which kind of not a fracture, but basically an extension of the Council. Like basically, it's another branch, I should say.
Yeah,
and there are canonically several branches to the Jedi Order. There's like the what do you call it? Archaeologist branch. There's like a historian branch of the Jedi Order, stuff like that.
I'm not sure if I'd say those are branches so much as just like classes.
There were
the
different
Jedi.
disciplines.
Disciplines, yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, disciplines and everything that different Jedi could go into. Some could be historians, some could be healers, some could be
guardians.
Sentinels. You didn't have just guardians and sentinels and counselors. You had other ranks of Jedi. Obviously, you could be a Jedi Master on the Council or the Council, but you could have like put it like in the terminology of like you went to college. You went to Jedi Temple, you learned how to be a Jedi, but you wanted to study history. You wanted to study the history of the Jedi. That could be something that you could do for the Order or within the Order. You could go to, you get a lead. Hey, this was a once upon a time planet in the Jedi Order. There is an old enclave here. There might be a cache of artifacts or whatever that you could go look for or whatever. I honestly, if they ever get around to doing the remake, I think that would actually be a kind of a cool thing that you could that they could implement and everything. Where because with the engines that they have for the next gen consoles, you could theoretically have something like that as part of your character arc or character dynamic.
One thing I would like from the new game, if it is, if I play it and if it is literally just a remake, basically an updated graphic in terms of in the old expanding verse, not in the new continuity, I hope there's an ability to at least try to block attacks. I could not figure out the pattern of attacking correctly. I remember so many times saving before a battle, dying, restarting, trying to change my strategy because there's no way to block to my knowledge.
But
Go ahead, Josh.
one thing I would hope for from a remake is that they don't just like remake it with better graphics and stuff. I would hope that they'd actually give voice acting to the player character.
And at least
Most
choose
likely,
the
I
voice.
would think they would. But here's the question: who do you get to voice Revan?
That is an
That's
excellent question.
who do
Maybe
you
for the
get?
male Revan, they could bring back the voice actor they used for the MMO game.
I
That's a
suppose so.
possibility.
If he was still with us, God rest him, there was only one guy I could see competently doing Revan. Gilbert Godfrey.
Who's that? Who?
Gilbert Godfrey. I know. I'm just
Ambassador's face. Who is that though? I've never heard that name before.
Iago from
No,
the
I know who
Disney
Gilbert
Aladdin
Godfrey
movie.
is.
No, I'm saying it to Josh. He was Iago on Disney's Aladdin in the 90s.
Hmm.
I couldn't help but resist being a troll. I mean, if maybe Keanu Reeves, because I don't know if he's done voice acting, but it would be a nice way of having him as an option for a voice, to feed some of as fan service, I guess you could say.
True.
For everybody that's fan casted Keanu Reeves as Revan, yeah, that would be a nice, okay, he has done one piece of voice acting, but only one, and that was for the Animatrix. And that was in the short kids story,
Yeah, that's
where
right.
he obviously plays Neo. It's Neo post getting out of the machine.
Cyberpunk 2, I'm pretty sure.
Did he do any voice work for Cyberpunk 2099 or 2077?
I'm pretty sure he did, because there's a character that is meant to be him.
I've never played it, so I wouldn't know.
If they did give Revan a voice actor, it would probably either go to Troy Baker, or who's the other guy who's Nathan Drake in Uncharted? I know his name.
I'll give you a good voice actor. And he may not have done voice acting in the past, but I think he could acclimate to it rather quickly. And I think he'd be a really good Revan. This is a current actor that's worked both in Star Wars and in Marvel. And no, I don't say that as a degrading thing. Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh, that would be good.
That would work. Mads is the one pirate guy plays the one pirate guy from Solo, right?
No. Mads Mikkelsen's the guy that played Galen Erso from Rogue One, and he also played
right.
He played the villain in the first Doctor Strange movie.
Thrawn is played by, I think,
his brother. I know.
Yeah.
Lars Mikkelsen, I know.
Nolan North, that's what I was thinking of.
Nolan North, huh?
Yeah, it just because he was the voice of Nathan Drake in the Uncharted series, and also voiced like Deadpool in some of the video games, and also like Penguin in Arkham City. I'm saying, if they were to pick a voice actor, they'd probably go with a popular one. That's I said, either Troy Baker or Nolan North. And Troy Baker was the voice of the clones in the Clone Wars.
Oh yeah, I know. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I think giving Revan a kind of a different
Nolan North was also the voice of the Jedi Consular character in Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO. So
okay, I've not played the MMO. I don't have a good enough computer for it, and I think reason I think Nolan North would actually be a decent one, because if they had a similar voice actor for Malik, if they didn't just bring back the original one, or just update his lines, update the quality of his recordings, I should say, I think Revan should be like a contrast to Malik in the sense. I mean, Malik is much more taller and imposing than Revan is, although Revan is the superior of the two, so he should be maybe not have the sort of mechanical deep voice that Malik has, and maybe have more of a mid-range voice that almost could sound pleasant, but depending. Because it also depends whether you play light or dark.
Right.
That's true too.
That
Well,
makes
but
sense. The only
Yep.
reason Malik has
Or
that
Sam
mechanical voice is because the
of the
Yeah.
mixing
Yeah.
lower jaw.
Well,
of the
that's what I'm
metal.
saying. That's what I'm saying. Or Sam Witwer would be a nice choice too. I mean, he's voiced so many
Yeah.
Star Wars characters.
He
Yeah,
has.
Maul,
I wouldn't be
Galen
opposed to
Merrick.
Sam Whipper as either Revan or Malik. Getting back to the game,
Yes,
the
go
games are Kotor. Talk about a rather imposing villain and everything, one that kind of casts his shadow over the whole gameplay. Not to mention a great name, Malik. Just Malik. Nothing else need to be said. Revan and Malik. It rolls off your tongue.
And
It's
go
Yeah,
ahead.
and his introduction is absolutely perfect. And you see him there on the bridge of his flagship, and you see the metallic collar around his head, around his the lower part of his head and everything, around his mouth and jaw area and neck, and you're wondering, okay, what the hell happened to this guy? And later on, you actually see what happened to him. That somebody, well, obviously we know who took off the lower part of his face. That was, of course, Revan, and they had to install the cybernetic voice box and amplifier into his throat, and then to protect it and to cover up the deformation, you have that metal collar. But not to mention his face, his image on the cover, the poster of the game itself. He's got his saber. He's overshadowing everyone else. It's kind of a very Vader-esque position that they put him in, and it's a great iconic piece of casework and everything for or cover art for the game itself. Not to mention he's on the disc art itself. It was
And he's
we
also
had
at
not
the starting menu of the game as well.
yeah. And, you got HK-47 down here on one side. You've got the what's the name of
The Manon
fancy.
species.
Yeah,
Cellcath.
Cellcath, and a great voice design for the Cellcath. This is an aquatic species. This is only the only second or third aquatic species that we've been introduced to in
And
the
it
Star Wars
sounds so
universe.
well.
Of course, the other two being, yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
And
the species you were saying, Mon Calamari and Celeste, I believe you're going to get at?
no, the Corns. The Corns.
Corns. Oh, the Corns.
Yeah, here's the Ace. Remember that the Moncala and the Corns,
Yeah.
they both inhabit the same planet, that being Moncala itself.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know why I said Celeste, but because I know that's
Yeah, because
that's Lando's co-pilot.
Solstans were actually Neum Num's race, and they live on a volcanic world.
yeah.
So
I got it. I got my wording mixed up. I don't know why.
it's okay. It happens. Let's see.
But yeah, the first time I saw Malik without his little jaw guard thingy, that legitimately terrified me. It kind of lost the terror factor after the second time I saw it, but the first time you see it, it's just like, what happened?
I thought you were going to say it lost its effect once you heard that cheesy mechanical laugh.
Let's see if y'all seen the Revan Malik anime film. It's really good. It was part of the fan-made KOTOR series that was canceled. No Sound Assassin. I was not aware there was one, so I'll have to definitely look that up later. So I
Wait a
did know
minute.
about.
Is that a Darth Starkiller profile picture?
That is. It is.
That is, yeah. That's Soul Assassin's. Soul Assassin kind of he swaps out his avatars and everything every once in a while. It depends on what the topic is. So read the KOTOR comics. I actually did read a few of those.
Same. They're good.
They are very, very good. That's
other than Thrawn, I'd have to say Revan and Malik are my two favorite villains to come out of the expanded universe.
Understandable. And with what Soul Assassin said, like he mentions the Kotor comics, I want to briefly mention this YouTuber named Boofire101 or 191, I believe. He mentioned a very interesting point about the Kotor series, not just the games, but also the comic, how each entry actually uses the medium it's into its advantage. Like the first game, it uses the medium of like, oh, you're a new character, but you're suddenly able to become a Jedi, and it actually incorporates into the story, and that leads to the twist of, oh, you've been Darth Revan the whole time. There's new memories and whatnot, and then the second game you kind of similar mechanics, but instead of oh you've been the villain the whole time, it's you are a cipher and you kind of leech off others, and that's why you get stronger. And in the Knights of the Old Republic game, the mechanics of the main character whose name escapes me, he has this essentially the best and worst force power, which is essentially the force makes him lucky at times, but also unlucky. So he'll get out of a near death situation, but it'll later on put him back in a near death situation, kind of playing on the tropes of the superhero genre because that's the most popular genre of the comic book medium.
The big thing for me with Kotor and Kotor Sith Lords, it really gave the Star Wars universe a real chance to expand beyond its boundaries of anything on screen or a comic book or a novel. This introduced, like I mentioned before Josh, before you got in here, it introduced new worlds that we had never seen or worlds that we had always wanted to see and never had a chance to. Now, granted, these are low res because at the time the graphics just weren't there to do high res imaging for these worlds.
Yeah,
but
there's no HDMI.
Right.
No, there was no HDMI at the time. There was no 4K at the time. There was no Blu-ray or anything like this.
All two
But
TVs.
even so, Korriban, you get there, and it's stunning. It's granted, it doesn't to us nowadays, considering what we're accustomed to, but at the time, this was a massive area to play through. There, you were in the heart of the Sith Academy. You could have been taken out at any time. Literally, any time. You could have been found out. Or here's the interesting thing. Depending on the course that you play through the game, if you get captured by Revan and you get discovered, you find out that you are Revan. Excuse me. You get captured by Malik and he reveals that you are in fact Revan. You can go to Korriban and say, guess who I am? I'm freaking Darth Revan. You're going to let me in here, period. And they have to let you in. It completely changes the entire dynamic of the whole playthrough of Korriban. Go ahead, Josh.
You can go ahead and finish.
That was one of the truly most awesome things to me because, like I said, I played side scrollers the majority of my adolescence and teenage years. I had never had my old brick Gen 1 Xbox was my first next level console that I ever owned, and it was a refurbished one. I got back when GameStop was actually cool. Now it's just kind of sad, and you don't want to go in there anymore.
Games.
And Kotor. Kotor 1's actually
Go ahead, Josh.
it actually has like an intended planet order of where you're supposed to go after Dantooine.
I imagine there is.
It goes like in the actual or in like the order that you see them, or the order that Bastila mentions them: Kashyyyk, then Tatooine, then Manon, then Korriban last.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that depends on how you want to play through, because I like doing Corbin second to last, or at least maybe after Tatooine personally, because I always like to try, because I figure you go to the Sith Temple and so forth, you really upgrade your character and whatnot in terms of your Jedi abilities. and you know it's useful later on when you're like, especially on Kashyyyk and Manan, because you know there is some a Sith Academy on or recruitment center on Manan, and that's what I find handy, and also because I like going to Corbin and turning Yatura Ban to the light side. And if you turn her to the light side before the Sith destroy Dantooine, spoilers, you can actually go back to Dantooine and see her on there, and she's doing well. It's like, hey, this is cool and whatnot. And
I did not know you could actually go back to Dantooine at any point in the game.
yeah, you can revisit any of them in any order. Like I said, the only ones you can't visit is, well, I didn't say this, but you can't visit Terrace after it's been destroyed, and after you progressed far enough in the games, or the last planet you have to find the star map on, like after you've basically been captured by Malik, you find out your revenue, you have to find the last star map planet. You can't go back to Dantooine because it's been destroyed.
Yeah.
And if memory serves, because I had the game also on my tablet, well, you could actually go to basically a satellite space station orbiting Yavin 4. And I tried it many times, but I thought from seeing online videos, I assumed it's a mod now, that you could go down to Yavin 4, because go to Yavin 4's satellite, talk to this guy, but you can never go down to Yavin 4. And I thought this would be interesting because he mentions dialogue about Exar Kun, and I thought, hey, this was not in the Xbox game that I played. I wonder if this was a PC exclusive thing or something.
I think the Yavin 4 stuff is just in the mobile port.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
Because one thing I wanted to mention that is great about Knights of the Republic, it also brings a lot of expanded universe material that was exclusive, just like books and comics. It makes it accessible for more casual Star Wars fans, because they're more likely to pick up a video game than they would be a comic or a novel. And like, you would not have known about Corbin or the ancient Sith Empire if you weren't reading Tales of the Jedi. You wouldn't have known about Exar Kun, Naga Sadow, and Marker Ragnos unless you were reading the stories. And then if you never heard of that stuff, you go to Corbin in the game, it's like, wow, there's all this lore I never learned about you. And if you didn't read the Jedi Academy trilogy, you learned the Jedi Code for the first time. And Kotor was the first time I heard the Jedi Code, and then Kotor even gave the Sith a code.
Oh, peace is a lie. There is only passion.
And that's the other cool thing. This is the first time for either the Jedi or the Sith that we actually hear the codes for either order.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great piece, and it has been something that has stuck through all the transitions, from Lucasfilm to Disney and everything. This is something that has lasted with the fandom for years on end, almost for decades. So, and do you want to say hello to the chat? Free to play, less pay. They say they've got a KOTOR playthrough on their channel. Dude, that's awesome. Really.
I'm gonna get a little refill. I just request hold off on talking about the second game for a few minutes till I get back.
Oh wait, we're not even done with the first game yet.
Just making sure I'm on the same page.
Right.
Yeah, but we're not even done. We're not even done with the first game yet.
Good. I'll be right back.
Since we mentioned remakes, do you want to know a game series that I would love to see remade and maybe continued? The Force Unleashed.
Yeah. I never got to play Force Unleashed 2. I only got a chance to see clips of it on here on YouTube. But the story looks incredibly well fleshed out. It
definitely is.
And I racked my brain trying to figure out why, of all the stories they never continued. Granted, they never continued with the Battlefront, because there was supposed to be a Battlefront 3, but there never was.
Mm-hmm.
Why there was never also a Force?
There was. Okay.
It drives me nuts. Why in the world we have never gotten the finale to Galen Merrick, Star Killer's story in Force
Right.
Unleashed 3.
But yeah, we were supposed to get a Battlefront 3. We were supposed to get a Force Unleashed 3, but that was around the time when the Lucasfilm Games company was kind of getting shut down, so that's why we never got the third installment to either of those.
Yeah, that's the only tragedy about Knights of the Republic. We never got 3. Supposedly it was in the works, but got delayed because of change of hands of the developers, thanks to LucasArts interference, which, to my knowledge, was not because of George, but someone at LucasArts.
Yeah, and I'd love to know who, so I could go kick their ass.
Yeah, and for Battlefront 3 and Force Unleashed 3 as well.
Yeah.
And 1313.
Yeah, Soul Assassin brought that up. We were supposed to get a Boba Fett game in 1313.
Supposedly 1313 was going to get turned into a Boba Fett game, but kind of hard to say.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It just...
A mall game
what we could have had.
Battle of the Sith Lords.
Interesting. But, getting back to KOTOR itself, this was... I have to say, of all the characters that you meet and where you meet them, my favorite characters have to be hands down. And yeah, I know that everybody's going to have their favorites. It's going to be Canderous and Jolie Bindo.
Yes.
Two of my favorite characters.
Agree.
Not that the whole party doesn't have great characters. They're all well developed, well written, well performed characters. But Jolie Bindo and Canderous, by far, of course, super high honorable mention for HK-47. I love those three.
I would not call my coworkers meatbags if it wasn't for HK-47. I call a lot of people meatbags because of him. But Jolie Bindo, he's the Jedi that's keeping it real. And I
love Jolie.
Personally,
Bindo.
I hate the concept of the gray Jedi. A lot of people say, "Oh, he's a gray Jedi." Like people say that.
Isn't.
People say that about Qui-Gon and him. I think the gray Jedi were never a thing in the expanded universe. They say, "Oh, but in KOTOR 2, you find a gray Jedi robe." That's describing the color, numbnuts.
Yeah. I know. There was a time that I actually was okay with the concept of a gray Jedi, but I'm thinking no.
I was too, but when I thought,
I was just look at it. It's just it doesn't it's not in keeping with how the Jedi were meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
They were supposed to be a blend. They were supposed to be a blend of both the light and dark sides. They were never supposed to adhere to one side or the other. The Force doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and the reason a lot of people want the gray Jedi is they just want to be a Jedi but want to be able to use Force lightning. That's it. That's the only
They want to be able to use Force lightning and Force choke, and guess what? There's a Jedi equivalent of Force lightning. It's just not as powerful. It's called
Force Judgment. Yes,
Force Judgment. Plo Koon knows how to use it, and Plo Koon is practically everybody's favorite prequel era Jedi.
Luke learned
how to use actually 400 years old.
Say that one more time, Josh.
He's actually 400 years old.
Who?
Plo Koon.
Oh, is he really? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me, Mo. I just remembered something. We were sitting here talking about Force Judgment. I'll be right back.
Uh-oh. I'm scared now.
I'm scared what he's going to get.
I'm scared myself.
But the Keldor species is actually really interesting in itself. If we're going to talk about that Plo Koon species. He was actually, before he was a Jedi, he was a Sage of Barandor, I think they're called, on his homeworld.
Apathy is death. He chose neither side and left exclusion. From there, he did nothing, helped no one, conquered nothing. And that was his path. You cannot be neutral in the moving train.
It's true. No, I was just literally going to my bookshelf because you can see on the cover of the final book in the Dark Nest trilogy, Luke is using Force Judgment.
Using Force lightning.
Yeah, it's for the Jedi Force Judgment is the Jedi equivalent of Force Lightning. It's not. So you can be a light side user and can essentially use Force Lightning. And actually, Force Judgment is much more powerful, but you have to be more disciplined. But like the Sith, people want the quick and easy path.
Also, Luke uses Force Choke at the beginning of Return of the Jedi. Just saying.
Well, Josh, we all know this.
Yes.
It's not the powers you use; it's how you use them.
And we never see him kill those Gamorreans. He just kind of
he just incapacitates them. He just incapacitates them. He doesn't kill them.
Yeah, his way of saying, "Don't f with me, man."
Yeah, don't screw with me. I won't kill you, but I'll knock you on your ass. But I can kill you if I want to. Okay.
Kind of unlukish.
I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father. He was the best star pilot in the galaxy. He was a cunning warrior and a good friend.
And highly flammable.
Imagine if he'd said that.
Not cool. Not cool. Too soon. Not too soon, dude. Too soon.
I love the
Yeah, so
anyways,
I know
back
about
to
OG
Kotor.
Star Wars.
I think I've seen some of their content. I like
she does some good stuff and everything. So
I don't really follow any Star Wars channels anymore, just because there's so much Disney related stuff, and the fandoms become split. I am neither condemning nor condoning the fandom menace or any people. I take no side, like in that whole Civil War Disney rumor and whatnot. I'm someone who just enjoys the old expanded universe. I like what Lucas did. Sorry,
I like what Lucas did.
I contradict.
I like what Lucas did, but there are some things that current era Lucasfilm has done that I've liked too. But I'll also hold to their feet to the fire when I think they screw up, and they have screwed up.
I've not watched everything. If people enjoy it, fine. I'm not going to pick on them for it. That's their choice. I choose not to. I stopped with Boba Fett, and I have no opinion on Obi-Wan. I have no opinion on Season 3 Mandalorian. I have no opinion on Ahsoka. The only stuff I have no problem with that I can say, oh, yes, I do like this, is Rogue One. I like Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Battlefront 2 was good after a few years of actually listening to the criticism. So I have no problem with that now.
Right.
But
we are on a 3-person panel of extremely ADHD individuals, aren't we?
ADHD autistic on my part.
I'm not ADHD nor am I autistic. So I'm the normal one, relatively speaking. But here's the getting into KOTOR. Not only did we have a great expansion of the universe and lore, but we got a great expansion on Force abilities and the Force abilities that you could attain as you leveled your character up, as you leveled Revan up, or you leveled up the Exile.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, my absolute all-time favorite Force power, and I know it's going to be cliche, I do not care if it is Force Crush. Because first it goes to first you can choke, then you can strangle, and then you can crush. And I loved it.
The enemy.
Pretty much what Luke did in Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 16, The Rescue.
And that reminds me of something from this YouTuber who literally has no names. He's the guy who did the popular video, The Philosophy of Kreia, who is a character from KOTOR 2, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, we'll get into KOTOR 2 here in a little bit.
Well, I'm not going to talk about KOTOR 2 yet, but he mentions in his video on about basically the nature of the Force in Star Wars. Like, basically, it's one of his spin-off videos relating, and he mentions how, the Force can be, there's some inherently good Force abilities, like heal, so on and so forth. There's some inherently bad ones, like, say, Force Lightning and Force Crush. And I thought, whoa, no. Force Crush is not inherently bad. It's how you use it. If you're using it to crush someone's windpipe, bad use. If you're using it to crush falling debris so that it's harmless dust that's about before it hits someone, good use. So Force Crush is kind of in the middle ground.
That is trying to kill people.
That as well. Yes, thank you, Josh.
Or if you're using it on droids. Who cares about droids?
Well, if the droids have feelings, I mean, can you see someone using it on 3PO? Although he could be rebuilt, but that's beside the point.
No,
Right.
that's not canon. That is.
I know.
And
I know.
speaking of droids, we get two
Hold
really
on.
great. Yeah.
Since we
What?
mentioned Judgment, is that in either of the KOTOR games?
No. It
They were
came later, like in this era of the Expandiverse, when it comes to, like, basically this was, I think, after 2005 or maybe 2004. I want to say this is the part of the Dark Nest trilogy. This was after basically New Jedi Order. Like once Luke had his academy and Leia's twins, Jason and Jaina, had trained under him.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, New Jedi Order era.
Yeah. And I'll bring up a free-to-play's comment here. I like that part where games actually codify and quantify force powers and their uses, thanks to which we don't have Rey healing sandworms out of the blue or Kylo Ren resurrecting.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And that's one thing.
It works as a game mechanic.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in the narrative of a story.
Exactly, because it raises up so many questions. I'm not even going to touch upon
we're not touching
lightsaber
that with
stabbing.
We're not touching that with a 10-foot lightsaber.
No.
You hush.
Mrs. Ambassador, how could you?
This is where me and her differ.
Oh,
She likes.
I differ with her.
She's
as well.
not. She's not a Raylo like a hardcore Raylo. She just happens like the characters.
As long as
likes
she
Rey and Kylo.
doesn't contribute to that disturbing fan art with like her and
No.
Kylo in bed with a baby bump, we're fine. We're fine.
No, she doesn't.
God.
She just.
That actually is
has-
one deviant art. It's
She
called
has-
deviant for
she
a
has-
reason.
She has the toy.
Well,
she has a couple.
not all
She has
deviant
a couple
art
of the
is-
hot toy. She has a hot toy of both Rey and Kylo Ren.
Yes, I'm a Raylo fan, and I am proud to say it, and I don't give a rat's.
Censored.
She doesn't give a womp rat's behind.
Romp rat's rear end. Did I say romp rat? But not
Romp.
all deviant art is bad stuff. It's
I
like,
know,
I've
I'm
seen some
teasing,
really
but you
good
see the
fan
more
art from-
deviant side of it. He's trying. Look at him. He's
All
trying
right.
to lift it up and toot her around.
Let's get back on topic.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, let's get back to KOTOR and not
Whatever
Other
we're
things.
talking about.
Me too.
go away. Soul Assassin, don't encourage her, even though she can't see your comment unless she gets on the actual chat. Oh, go away.
I forget. Like, since I've obviously not watched all of your streams, has Mrs. Ambassador ever been in the discussion before? Like, part of the
Yes.
chat, I mean. Okay, I've missed
And
that
in
one.
the
apparently.
in the chat, no. As a panelist, yes.
Okay.
But that's
Yeah, I was just
sparingly
curious.
when it's a topic that we both want to talk about. Like she was supposed to join me for all three of the Hunger Games reviews. Unfortunately, we only got to do the first one together. But
Yeah.
You
I didn't.
it's
I
not-
didn't join that stream just because I know nothing about the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I never saw
that's
them
okay.
or read them.
We did. Fair enough. Anyway,
Yeah.
back to KOTOR.
Mhm.
Okay, force powers and lightsaber combat and melee combat and blaster combat and all the other combat systems that we had in this game. We had not seen something like this in the Star Wars universe because this takes place, 3,000 years before the prequels, roughly? 5
Almost
years?
4,000. It's like 3,900 something, if I believe, because
So
it's like
4,000
40
well,
years
just-
after the Great Sith War.
So just a shade under 4,000 years. So
Yeah.
you've got vibroblade swords and you've got vibroblade daggers and all this other stuff, and you've got blasters, and you can change the loadout for your characters, or you can optimize them for the very best thing. And you've got these insertable. You can essentially make your characters like the Borg. You can put stim packs in them so they heal faster. You can put them in different types of robes if they're a force user and increase their abilities. And so many great mechanics in this game, and both of them, as a matter of fact. And
Of course.
excuse me.
According to
Personally, I loved all that. Guys, your Ace and Josh, your thoughts?
uh,
Go ahead, Josh. I'll wait.
according to the wiki, Kotor is set in 3956 BBY.
Okay, I was a few decades off.
Not by much.
But in terms of like the ability to choose like how you want your character to like whether or not they have mechanics in it, I like that, it's basically up to you because you can decide whether or not they're an all natural Jedi or if they're a Jedi that's using some technology, because based on the lore surrounding the prequels, like the Jedi viewed Anakin after he lost his arm in episode 2 to like losing some of his humanity. So like basically choosing whether or not you want the technology to be inside your body in Kotor kind of determines whether or not you're light side or dark side, if I remember correctly. I don't know if you actually get rewarded light or dark points for choosing
No, you
that.
don't.
Okay,
No,
I
no, you
didn't think so.
The
But
the main mechanic that shows whether you were light side or dark side was the choices that you made when you interacted with people, or the choices you made that directed the story.
Yeah. And not to get off topic, for anyone, I'm not saying watch his stream right now. I'm saying later on, once the stream is complete, if he's still up, go over to Professor Geek's channel. He's live streaming this video called Missing the Point of Star Wars. He'll probably say some stuff that Ambassador disagrees with, because Ambassador is open-minded about taking in the new content. He's admitted that he likes some of the new stuff. Professor Geek, not so much,
I've heard Professor Geek.
Yeah, I tend to agree
Professor
with Professor Geek. I've given some more chances than him, but yeah, I'm just giving him a shout out for anyone who's never watched him before.
I'm gonna say the only new content I really didn't enjoy was the Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
I
Like,
will never watch another new Star Wars movie ever again after The Last Jedi. I've stuck to that. I've given shows a chance, but I've never watched a new movie since.
okay, Jolie Bindo fought in the Exar Kun War. He even has a sad story about his wife
Yep.
when you talk to him enough.
That's absolutely right.
That's
right.
one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I love his character, is because you get a picture from someone who actually experienced that event in the Star Wars universe's history.
Yeah, he's kind of the cynical Jedi.
Wasn't?
Because he's seen so much.
Yeah, he kind of, to me, is like the disillusion. He's kind of like the George Carlin of the Jedi. Like, he's seen a lot of crap,
yes.
and he's calling out the bull crap as he sees it. Whether or not you agree with him is up to you, the player.
Right. Wasn't Jolie's wife also a Jedi?
She was.
Yes.
But you know what's fun about Jolie Bindo is, you know how some people theorize that like Mace Windu could have survived the fall in Revenge of the Sith and like gone on to do some more stuff? People who do fan art of that scenario often use like Jolie's face as a basis.
Well, partly with like the older look.
Yeah. But I'm going to say this, and it's definitive as far as I'm concerned. Mace Windu is dead.
And what's even better, I remember, I probably still have the issue of Star Wars Inside. There was deleted storyboards showing that even if Mace Windu fell and was still alive, believe it or not, that who was waiting for him at the bottom saw him falling, and he thought, I'm going to take a shot at him. I'm not making this up. Boba Fett. This was, like I said, Star Wars Insider, like back in 2004 or 5, like just before around the time the movie came out, or just after, so that way people will, it wasn't complete spoilers.
Right.
If I knew which issue and page, I'd go and grab it right now out of my closet.
I would believe that.
But, here's the one thing I love, the one thing I enjoyed most about KOTOR, it was, yes, I enjoyed being the good guy, but it was even more fun being the Sith, just being absolutely cold-blooded, bloodthirsty, just giving into every single solitary.
Psychotic urge.
In a manner of speaking, yes.
case.
The one thing I loved when I had enough charisma and enough persuasion, when you're on Ricotta Prime and you're making the rest of the crew choose which side they're going to be on. It's after you kill Jolie Bindo and Juhani with Bastila, and you compel Zelbar to kill Mission. And then when you get to the Star Forge, he's like, wait a minute, what did you make me do? And he finally snaps at it, and then you just destroy it.
Dead.
But
dead Wookiee.
The drawback of Wookiee life debts.
That's the case in literally every RPG ever made. Is just being evil is funner.
Well, to be completely honest, I've never done a dark side playthrough. I tried starting. I got far to a point in Terrace. I think when I was talking to that hut, but I was like, I can't do this. It's just, I just can't. I just couldn't do it. I just thought, this is bad. But I know.
I did.
Say it's fun and whatnot. The only time I can do it is when I'm being rewarded for it, like in, say, The Force Unleashed, where you can choose the dark side path, etc., etc.
Oh, I
have motivation. I'll do it.
I saved and I destroyed the Republic on numerous occasions. I destroyed the Star Forge. I saw my fleet stretching out across the stars from the Star Forge, going to crush the last remnants of the Republic, and I was just basking in all my power. I loved it.
Soul Assassin mentions how being evil is the only way you can get the Dark Revan robes on the Starforge, and
that's true.
There is actually a light side version of his robes that you can get if you go purely light. But from what I understand, the only way you can get, basically find the mask and actually put it on is by doing complete dark side. Is anyone in this, have you and Mr. Ambassador, have you ever done a complete dark side playthrough to where you've got the old robes?
Well, she's never played KOTOR.
No, you, Mr. Ambassador, said.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've played as Darth Revan, and everything. I got Revan's robes, and I absolutely massacred Malik. He stood no chance.
I didn't even know there was a proper Revan's mask in the game. I knew there was the mask that looks vaguely like his mask in the chest on Korriban, but that's all I remember.
And actually, go ahead.
No, I'm just reading Free to Play's a comment here. A scene where you either convince your party to join you in evil or fight you unless it happens. Also happens in another BioWare game, NWN2. What's NWN? I don't know what those initials are.
I'm not sure myself. Do you know, Josh?
Neverwinter Nights, according to Google.
Okay, yeah, that's
what
okay. And
never heard of it, but that doesn't mean anything.
Since we were mentioning Revan's mask, actually, the fun little piece of trivia is in the game. It doesn't even though it's the dark side one, which is not canon, but in the Revan novel, he actually does get his mask back, and I can't remember the exact circumstances. I want to say that either Bastila or Mitra Sutric got a hold on it, or Bastila did. She gave it to Mitra Sutric to give to him when she found him, and when she did find him, Revan was actually a prisoner on the true Cis home world, which I forget.
Dromund Kaas.
Yeah, Dromund Kaas. Thank you very much, Josh. I was drawing a blank, but basically he's like, wow, you found my mask. And the minute he puts the mask back on, all his memories of basically before the events of KOTOR 2, come back to him, and he remembers who he was, and he still chooses the light side path. I'm going to go take down Sith Emperor Vitiate.
And then he spent 300 years in a prison in a maelstrom.
Yeah, like I said earlier, and also I think Soul Assassin said, the Revan novel is just okay. It leaves much to be desired. I think if it was decompressed into 3 books, it would have been better. That way you get enough time with Revan, you get enough time with Lord Scourge, and you would get more than enough time with with Mitra Sutra because she was so underutilized. She was such an important character in KOTOR 2, but I'll save that from when we get on to KOTOR 2.
Well, we will hear in just a minute. Because I do want to kind of put a little bit of a bow on KOTOR before we move on to the Sith Lords. Of the moments, well, Ace, from your playthroughs, and Josh, from what you've been able to watch, what's your favorite moment, whether it's a character moment or a plot point or something else along those lines from the first KOTOR that really sticks with you?
I'd have to say the reveal that you were Revan the whole time. And then the Jedi that he has in the Bacta tanks on the Starforge for the final boss fight.
Oh, for Malik? Yeah.
Mhm.
That was
I would say the reveal of you being Revan is my second favorite moment. My favorite is something that ties into what a conversation with Joe Lee Bindu said earlier when he said how love will lead to as much suffering and pain and so forth for everybody. Yeah, but so you want love, you got to fight for it. And remembering that lesson, you actually talk to Basil when she's on the dark. She's like, "Go ahead, kill me," and you convince her that to come back to light through the power of love. A reflection of Jolie's teaching of like love will save you, not condemn you. Even though, sadly, if you play as the female Revan and do a dark side playthrough, Karth tries that on you and doesn't turn you back to light. You stay evil.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that was my favorite moment where you as light side Revan turn Bastila back to the light by confessing your love to her, and she even says, "I love you too. Nothing can make me safer than to be loved by you." Like, and that's coming from a guy that's not romantic. So I think that's saying
you don't have to be a romantic to appreciate good writing.
Yeah, and also I think that just goes to show the power of everyone thinks of love in the romantic sense, but it could also be in the compassionate sense as well. Like it's a force of good. Like you care enough, like about someone to like basically put yourself in harm's way to help them, even if you don't benefit from it.
So
Karth is such a Boy Scout.
I do want to touch on Karth briefly before we do move on to KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords.
Underrated character.
Karth Onasi is kind of a Boy Scout, I will agree, but he is a Boy Scout with a purpose.
Yeah,
he is the soldier that has been in the ranks. He has worked his way up through the ranks of the Republic Army or the Republic
fought
military.
In the Mandalorian Wars.
Yeah, fought next to Revan, fought for Revan, saw what Revan could do, and then saw the absolute heartbreak of what happened. I think one of my favorite moments is when Karth is having to face down his old captain that's actually the commander of Malik's flagship.
And go ahead.
It rips your heart out to see Karth have to take down his own former commander. And it rips you in half because you see two soldiers that have served together for so long, and to see one go just down the tube. So go to Saul Kareth. Yeah, Saul Kareth. That was the name. That was the name of the commander.
Kind of an echo of the dynamic between Anakin and Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith, if you think about it.
It is. It kind of is. So
and that's I think he's not a complete Boy Scout, but then again, people say Boy Scout and they don't necessarily know what Boy Scout means because they'll say like, "Oh, Superman is such a Boy Scout, Captain America is such a Boy Scout." Well, not necessarily. And if you mean that, if you know their characters, there's so much more to the Boy Scout thing than what most people think. And Karth is a good Boy Scout because, like you mentioned, his confrontation with his old mentor is just kind of like so detrimental to his character because how
Well,
the loss of his wife, and finding out, oh, my son's still alive. Whoa, he's here on Corbin at the Sith Academy.
that was another good moment too. That
Yeah,
really was.
yeah.
That was a great moment as well, especially when
And you have in your party trying to tell his son, dude, what are you doing?
and if you have the right stats, you can convince him to leave, to not necessarily go join the Republic, but get him out of the Sith Academy at least. Get him out of there. Get him to leave.
Persuade and charisma were my two favorite stats.
Yeah, because it allowed you to do so much.
Yeah, and the way I figured, if you get an astromech droid in the game, you don't really need the mechanics and whatnot.
Well, we didn't really get a chance to touch on this, but T3M4.
I always forget his last two numbers, but yes.
T3M4. Great proto R2 droid, and you could do so much with him. You can make a mechanic, you can make him a good backup and everything as a ranged combat character and everything if you had him in your party. Like we've talked about so many times, HK-47, that very dark, very somewhat dry homicidal humor.
That's why
I don't know to this day who did the voice of HK-47, but
Request. Die, meatbag.
I hope I can meet HK-47's voice actor at a con someday. That is not Star Wars Celebration, because I'm not going all the way out of states just for Star Wars Celebration.
Christopher Sabori, I think is how you pronounce it, is who voiced HK-47.
Interesting.
Damn.
I looked it up on Google.
That guy did a great job with that character.
And I was going to say about T3 47 or not 47, but whatever his last number. M4. Thank you. I mean, yeah, he's basically prototype R2D2. The only downfall is he doesn't have R2D2 spunk and personality. That's the only, at least to me.
He does a little, but yeah.
But I think that's also because, it's game mechanics is different as the movie where you can write R2 to have so much personality, being a silent one, where it's much harder than a game. So I know there's limitations. So I can't harp on it that hard because of it, because I know there was limitations to what they could do.
Yeah, and I'll bring up Free to Play's comment here. You need repair to work on HK. You can't delegate it. Go
ahead.
Well, I'm just reading it. It's worth way more than Persuade that can be skipped with a mind trick. That's true.
Yeah, I actually did do playthroughs where you can basically, where you're able to repair HK-47, and part of it is actually getting a certain belt and equipping it. I just can't remember which one it is, but I know what you're talking about. And Madam Ambassador, oh dear Lord, sorry, I just had to read what's he talking about? CJ? Oh no,
no, not CJ. CJ,
I know. Yeah, I realized that as I was reading her name. So we know who to ignore this in the comments.
Soul Assassin, it's
damn
Mrs. Ambassador. We're married. See that? It's called a wedding ring. There's supposed to be an MRS before the ambassador, not
single
an MS.
For 31 years.
We haven't been married that long. We've been married 8 years.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, unmarried for 31 years.
Oh. I'm sorry, dude.
It's no harm, no foul. That's what alcohol's for.
Oh my god!
Right. Moving on to
Kotor 2.
Kotor 2, the Sith Lords.
I know very little about it except for Kreia, Scion, and
Nihilus.
Yeah.
Oh, before I just want to say, relating to Malik, one thing I like about Malik, two little things. One, obviously his name is basically saying Darth Malice, but obviously Star Wars, so Darth Malik. And insignificant piece of trivia, I actually went to school with someone that was named, last name was Malik, and spelled the same way. I'm not even making that up.
Get back in the chat. Get back in the chat. Go away. This is my stream. Go away.
Speech.
Yeah. My freedom. You go away.
Your speech.
He's in his man cave, his sanctuary. Leave him alone.
Technically, it's our living room.
You know what I mean? Soul Assassin. Oh yeah, I know that was Malik's real name was Alec, but I'm just saying like Darth Malik, I should say.
All right.
KOTOR.
Enough of KOTOR 1. Let's move on to KOTOR 2. Ace, I think you and me are going to have to carry Josh a little bit, but that's okay.
That's
we won't
fine.
hold it against him because he's a youngin.
Yep. Still wet behind the ears.
I know the lore bits of it. I just don't know the gameplay bits of it.
No, I mean you're obviously sweaty. Take off the headphones and wipe the ears off. That was awful. Sorry.
Yes, it was. You apologize to Josh.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Josh.
It's fine because I didn't even know what you said.
It was too dry. It was drier than a feminist at a MGTOW rally.
Drier than the sands of Tatooine.
My God, that came off as overtly political. I am so sorry for that.
You should have said the sands of Tatooine or Korriban.
Yeah,
Korriban
that would have related to the subject. Moving on.
Ace. There are trees in the forest that are producing oxygen. I think you should go apologize to them.
That was a nice burn.
Oh, good one.
You got me good, dude.
Man.
Respect.
All right. Let's get into KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords.
Yes,
right. Dig my hole
So,
in the grave deeper.
I'd prefer you not. Okay. Let's jump into the first. Let's answer Soul Assassin's question. Ace, this will be more me and you, Josh. If you want to chime in, where do y'all stand on the theory that Kreia is the Handmaiden's mother?
I think it is her. I think it is her. Because it's been like I think it's over many years between the events of KOTOR 1 and 2, if I remember correctly.
It is.
And
it's at least 10, 15 years, if not more.
Yes, and that's plenty of time for Kreia to have obviously been in the Mandalorian Wars, meet the Usani general, get married, have a child, and then, like basically go and form the Sith Triumvirate to, get cast out and then become Kreia as we know her.
Yeah. And, here's the... 5 years. Okay, thank you, Soul Assassin. I wasn't sure.
Man, I'm thinking maybe we're thinking between the Mandalorian Wars and KOTOR 1.
We might be.
Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing about KOTOR 2. Very different dynamic, but at the same time, very similar dynamic. Where your character isn't the big bad. He or she is almost like the MacGuffin of the entire game, in a matter of speaking.
Well put.
But a good MacGuffin, not a worthless dagger-shaped MacGuffin. See what I did there?
Let's not.
This isn't Alias in Space.
Didn't see it, so no comment. But I do know that spoiler. I do know what you're talking about.
I have no idea what that means.
Alias in Space.
Alias was a movie.
No, Alias was a TV show.
Oh, TV show, sorry.
Produced by J.J. Abrams, who was, of course, the director of the last Star Wars movie.
Rise of Palpatine.
The last Star Wars movie.
But
probably literally the last Star Wars movie, because Disney will run out of money before they ever get the next one off the ground. Okay.
Abrams loves his mystery boxes, but doesn't even know what it means.
Let's stop.
Yes.
Talking about that and just stay on topic
Ace,
for the rest of this stream.
Ace, that isn't the only box that Abrams doesn't know what it means. There's another box that's somewhat more organic. Yes. Okay. Finally.
Are we done?
Yes.
That's what she said.
Dear God.
You opened the door. I just walked through it.
Dude, I can open the door wider, but I'm not going there.
That's what she said.
Okay, you forced me. Why are you talking about Miss Ambassador?
She's not in the chat.
That's what you think.
She is not in the chat, but I'm sure she's watching. Aren't you, honey? Hey, man, now she'll come out here. Yes, dear. What were you saying? Okay. KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords. Good grief. What have we done? I tried to run a professional, or at least a semi-professional. That box joke was weak, man. Could have used JJ's not finishing for a better joke. Actually, no, Chill Assassin, you're not wrong.
That's low.
No, he's not entirely wrong. I could have gone a different direction with that box.
I knew what you were saying. I knew what you were saying.
I know you were.
But then again, you and I are similar wavelength humor-wise.
Yes. All right. KOTOR 2, the Sith Lords. Similar dynamics, but at the same time, completely different dynamic.
It is a true... Go ahead.
The one thing that bothered me, though, is that there were some quests that you could not finish because the game was buggy as hell. That's the one thing drove me nuts.
3 words: restored content mod.
Yeah, I know about the restored content mod. I've just never had a chance to play that version.
For the audience that might not know.
Although I will say, and I don't say this necessarily as a derogative, the party isn't as memorable as it was for KOTOR.
I agree.
It wasn't a bad party, but it just wasn't as dynamic. Does that make sense at all? I'm not bashing the game. I love the game because it had a great story. And I think because it wasn't like KOTOR 1, it wasn't a copy and paste of the first game. It did something different. But the party just seemed to be lacking in certain areas or anything in terms of the characters. Now, I don't know if that was due to bugs itself or what, but there's only there's only like 2 or 3 really remarkable standout characters in the party.
Yeah, I will say I think it's because they're going more for function over, the aesthetic for that. And, each character serves their purpose. Like, obviously, we have Aton in the game and
Rand.
Yeah, and he's memorable to me because he's the smart ass. He's the one I gravitate towards. And we do have some repurposes of characters from the prior game. Obviously, Canderous is back, but he's obviously Mandalore now. And even though he only has so much time, we have HK-47 back after a time, along with T3, and we don't really see much from the other characters. Jolie is gone, so is Juhani, and so is Mission and Zalbar, and we do see not Canderous, Karth, but he's obviously not a playable character. I would have liked some more interaction with him, though. But some of the other characters, obviously, we have what is her name?
I've actually got the character list or anything. I pulled up. I've got an extra tab. I just never bothered bringing it up. I can bring it up right now.
Thank you. Like, I do know the aspects of the characters. The one Jedi, disciple, who's basically is a adherent to the Jedi and whatnot. And there's the sightless one who is a former, servant of Nihilus.
Visas Mar.
Visas Mar. Thank you. And obviously, we do see Bastila again. We briefly, and I want to say Bayo-Dur, who is the
Bayo-Dur.
Yeah, Bayo-Dur, the guy who created the mass shadow generator.
Yeah, and here's all the characters and everything. I mean, you got there's Atten right there. There's Kreia. Yeah, Bayo-Dur, Hanhar, which was from the first
Dark Side playing through.
Yeah. There's Visa Samar. There's Brianna. I think she was the handmaiden.
Yeah, she was the
remember correctly.
handmaiden to Atris.
Yeah, Atris. Oh, we almost forgot about Darth Baden.
Yeah. Wait.
Which
Yeah, that's right.
I can make a really bad political joke, but I won't.
Yeah, I don't get the political joke. For when I was a kid, I thought Darth Brandon. But just
Yeah.
I have a cousin named Brandon, so I just thought Darth Brandon. Oh wait, Bandon. No, I think of it as Darth Bandon. The only one I don't see on the list here is the woman bounty hunter from Kotor 2 that joins your party if you go on the light side path, or at least I don't think I see her.
Let me see if I can hang on because I've got
unless she wasn't a bounty hunter, but I just remember her as being like a bounty hunter assassin character. She's basically a rival of Hanhar.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
And for the record, the video I referenced earlier from the YouTuber with no name who did the Philosophy of Cray video, one of the other videos I mentioned was called The Foundations of Star Wars. I can't remember like what the point I was trying to reference was, but that was one of the aspects of the video I took it from. And not to shift gears away from KOTOR 2, but briefly back into KOTOR 1 was the explanation of like midi-chlorians, like in the first game, like Bastila says, the Force is kind of like a flame. In some people, it's like a small little spark, and others, it's a large flame and whatnot. And kind of, expanding upon midi-chlorians in the games, basically saying like, oh yeah, everyone does have midi-chlorians, but some people it's like a small little spark, and sometimes like it's a raging fire and whatnot. So it expands upon, kind of people's whiny nitpicks about how, oh, the midi-chlorians ruined Star Wars. No, you just misunderstood what the movie was about, dude.
Yes.
And I like later on,
okay, here we go.
Time, I'll have
Here's the
fan theory I have. Yep, let's see here. Nihilus,
okay,
the Star Wars.
Here's
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Hey, you're fine.
Mira, that was her name. But I was saying Darth Nihilus, the Star Wars equivalent of Galactus from Marvel.
Yes, is in essence.
Yeah, and a Star Wars vampire, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. Okay. All right. One character that drove me absolutely nuts in this game, Goto. This character drove me up a freaking tree. The droid that turned out it was actually just a droid. It wasn't some guy that had downloaded his brain into a droid's body or something. It was just a droid, just a really advanced droid that had created its own criminal empire.
It was so late in the game, it didn't bug me personally. Others' mileage might vary. Personally, Vrook annoyed me more just because Vrook's an a-hole.
Yeah, but he's voiced by a really good actor.
Well, yeah. Well, I know that just goes to show how good of an actor he is. If he can make the character an a-hole, he succeed in his job.
There's the disciple Mikhail. And then Kavar.
Disciple.
Yeah. Kavar? Why don't I remember that character?
He was one of the Jedi you are looking for when you're trying to gather, the remaining members of the council. If you look for Vrook, Zezkael, Kavar. Yeah, I believe Kavar. I can't remember which system he was on. I know Zezkael was on Nar Shaddaa, but I believe Kavar was. Part of me wants to say Telos, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong.
I honestly don't remember because it's not that I don't. Obviously, I enjoyed KOTOR 2 as much as I did KOTOR 1, but I don't know if it was just because it was so buggy, or I found out later on it was so buggy. Because at the time, I really wasn't into gaming news and all that other stuff, so I didn't know there was an issue with KOTOR 2, that it got rushed. And not to mention, it wasn't BioWare that did the second game, it was Obsidian.
Aspire. Obsidian. I was about to say Aspire. I'm thinking
Obsidian Studios.
That's right.
Now, the one thing I will say that
Under on
the
that.
one of the interesting mechanics in the game is the fact that your choices actually do affect the rest of the party. If you are if you go Paragon Jedi, even somebody like Captain Rand, his attitude and his personality will change. But if you go full dark side Sith or full just dark side, everybody, even the decent characters, they start to take on those attributes as well.
And that just goes to show that no matter how many times you play the game, no matter how much you try to, you will never have the same playthrough experience because it's that complex. I mean, like I mentioned, YouTuber with no name and his philosophy of Crave video. When you're on
I think I've actually
Dantooine,
watched it.
yeah, I've watched it. I can't even tell you how many times since like 2018 or 2019 or whatever it was, but I remember in his playthrough, or like footage from his playthrough, I should say, when Cray is saying like I wanted to know how a Jedi could turn from the Force and so on and so forth, but now I understand. In his playthrough, she says it's because you had no choice. In my playthrough, it's because you were afraid, and I thought, really? But it's because that mechanic just goes to show no matter how hard you try, you're going to have an experience that's unique to you. For all I know, that was his dark side experience, and when I did the light side, though.
The big thing for me with KOTOR 2 was, how is this going to expand and how is this going to be better than KOTOR 1? Because KOTOR 2 had a lot to live up to. It had to carry on the story if it was going to carry on the story from the first game, but it also had to expand the universe in its own ways. And the interesting thing is, you weren't seeking out a Star Forge, you were trying to figure out a way to defeat these other two Sith Lords. And let's be honest, the concept of a Sith triumvirate, or at least a Sith duo, where you had Nihilus and Scion, and when you get to Malachor 5, the Sith temple there, absolutely terrifying. Okay, not terrifying, but absolutely dark and foreboding, and just it was just incredible.
A dead world, yeah, just so
Yeah.
ambient in a spooky way. And like, even everyone might say whether or not they played the modded version or the old version, they can say, oh, the old one's version's buggy and whatnot. Everyone unanimously agrees Kreia is the most interesting character in either of the KOTOR games, debatably in all of Star Wars, just because of her philosophy.
That's what makes Kreia truly a very unique character in the Star Wars universe, because we have never seen a character like this before. Here's a woman who once was a Jedi, but fell out of favor or became disillusioned, like other Jedi have in the past, or will, and granted, be also into the future of the Jedi Order. And she eventually became neither Jedi nor Sith. And the interesting thing is, when you get to Malachor, when you get into the depths of the temple, and it's just you and her, and you finally defeat her in combat. And believe me, you think the final fight with Darth Malak is hard. It is. The final fight with Kreia is equally hard.
3 lightsabers.
Yeah, well, not just that, but
Just saying for people.
oh yeah, not just that, but I will say this: the payoff for the fight with her, I think, is 100 times more. I think there's a bigger payoff with your defeat of her than your defeat of Malik. With Malik, you're just defeating the bad guy. With her, you finally get to see into the future, in a manner of speaking. And it depends on the gameplay. I remember some of her dialogue very distinctly. She's like, all the people in your party, they'll go on to be the new Jedi Council that will do things the right way. And she makes mention of, you can ask her about the different fates of the characters. And I remember one in particular, I think it's Mira. She's like, she will go on to be a Jedi and she will go off to a forgotten world and she will fall, but she will have died defending and she will die on her own terms. And you're thinking, that's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's actually kind of noble too.
Yeah, and one thing that, because there is the option in the game whether or not she makes a suggestion, you can either take one of the ships and leave the planet, or you can stay here on Malachor 5 and wait for the people who feel the echo that you've sent out and come here, and you could become a teacher like me. But she, tells you the visions of the future she has, and she's seeing what is the canon future of basically what leads into like the original trilogy. Oh, the Republic will fall, the Sith so on will be destroyed, so on and so forth. And she sees the rebuilding of the Jedi Order. So it's funny, even though she says you have a choice, but she still sees what is the outcome of what is going to be the light side choice, which is not what she wants. And it just, I think it's kind of a reflection on like the futility of her plans, because like as interesting as her philosophy is, like her goal was, I mean, her philosophy could still be applicable because it's, in a way, her philosophy did become true through Luke and his new Jedi Order, but her goals of trying to destroy the Force was in vain, because she thought if you basically killed off as many people that were Force sensitive enough, the Force would would die and because she didn't like the idea of it, having a will and controlling people, because she saw it as there is no real free will. But she forget, as Obi-Wan said in the original movie, it's an energy field created by all living things. It doesn't say by Force sensitive, all living things. So even if she destroyed a massive number of people and they were became wounds in the Force and they were deafened to the Force would still exist after a time. It would life would still exist, and the Force would rebuild itself. So her whole idea of basically trying to kill the Force because she hates it is in vain. I mean, if she wanted true free will, what she could have done? She could have gone over to it was in Heir to the Empire. But basically, she could have gone and gotten Ysalamiri, and then she would have been free from the Force, unless they were just not in a stage of evolution at that point, where they could actually have that anti-Force bubble. But that's a whole other thing and a half.
Yeah, I think it's on the world where Talon Card had his base of operations.
Yes,
No.
Wayland.
Was it on Wayland? It was on Wayland because Thrawn goes there to find the Emperor's warehouse, but then he also finds the Ysalamiri there as well, because he actually has the Ysalamiri with him when he finds the clone of Joruus Saboth.
Yeah, I forgot.
Or Joruus Sobaoth, or whatever way you want to pronounce the
Emperor's Vault is on Wayland. Talon Card is on a different planet. I forgot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just forget the planet he was on, but going back to KOTOR 2.
One of the other interesting facts with KOTOR 2 is we get to see at least some of the fates of the original party. I mean, we get to see what happens with Karth. Obviously, he's still with the Republic. He's still working with the Republic military. We see what's happened to Canderous. and now he's Mandalore the Preserver. He's worked up his way through the ranks because of his work, of his time with Revan, and him having that prestige on his with his reputation, and he was
Mhm.
able to work his way up. There's one scene that I remember very vividly, and it's when you're on, I think it's Onderon, and you meet Canderous, and there's a conversation between Kreia and Canderous. And she's like, "You remain silent, or I will rip you asunder." And you're like, "This old woman's gonna take on a Mandalorian of his stature." That'd be interesting to see.
Yep.
Duxon. Thank you, Soul Assassin. I couldn't remember if it was Onderon or Duxon, but it was Duxon. Okay. Another world that we'd seen in the comics, but we had never seen represented otherwise. I've forgotten that. Yeah, Candace had established a Mandalorian enclave on Duxon, not Onderon.
Yes.
So
And to answer your what you said, free to play, yes, I do know that yes, Salamir would not really help her because it influenced the world around her, but she would personally be freed from the Force. But at the same time, yes, she would still be influenced by her interaction with people around her, but she personally would be free from the influence of the Force, which is what I was trying to say. She could still try to influence people like through her ability of manipulation, like just verbally and whatnot, because like she said, it involves knowing how to strike at the critical points, and that sometimes just through words and whatnot, so much action. But she personally would be free from the influence of the Force, is what I was getting at. But at the same time, like I said, it's still in vain because you can't destroy the Force, because
no.
energy field created by all living things. You'd have to kill everybody to be free from the influence of the Force, which defeats the purpose. Mike having issues, Josh? Oh, try saying something. I heard a fan.
I got static, but I think I hear your fan, Josh, but I don't. Try saying something, bud.
Maybe unplug and replug it.
Yeah. I'll bring up Soul
Are you
Assassin's
hearing me
comment
now?
here.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're coming through, bud.
But since I don't really know KOTOR 2, I don't know if you actually see it in KOTOR 2, but I know in the Star Wars The Old Republic MMO, you find out that Bastila eventually became the Jedi Grandmaster.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, that would make sense, considering her connections. Influence the ships she's or uses in Shadows of the Empire. No Soul Assassin, I was not aware of that, but nice little, neat little piece of lore and everything to add in. So, here's the thing. Kreia's motivation, I think, was a bit flawed because she came to resent or even hate the Force. It isn't the Force's fault, the choices that the people who are attuned to it, it's the people themselves that made the choices.
Right.
It's unfortunately the Force that gave them the ability to affect the world around them in the ways that they did. That's the biggest issue.
And also, when there's the conversation with the handmaid, she says how much of what we choose to do is our choices and not the will of the Force. But they obviously don't have the luxury of hearing interviews with George Lucas, where he explains on the 2011 Blu-ray set when he's having a Clone Wars meeting and whatnot, and Dave Filoni's there is discussing the mechanics of the Force. And he mentions how like everyone has a destiny, but everyone has a free will at the same time. So.
Right.
It's a question of how much is the free will that determines the destiny and vice versa. There's always an emphasis on destiny, but there's also emphasis on free choice because Vader says it is your destiny to join me and kill the Emperor and whatnot.
But
Does Luke do that? Nope, he chooses not to.
when Ace mentioned Obi-Wan earlier, I was trying to say his quote, "The Force is an energy field that's created by all living beings. It surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together."
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll be afraid to play's comment here as well. Um, I'm also not saying that the Force is. I'm also not saying that the Force is made up by life forms. Kreia believes the Force has a will, guides people. She'll act accordingly to her beliefs, not facts she rejects.
Okay, that is a valid point.
Yeah.
So
Here's the thing. We know from Lucas and from the lore the Force does have a will. But at the same time, you've got two wills at play here. You have the will of the Force, the cosmic force, or the living force, whichever one you want to discuss. And then you have the person who has you have the individual, or in this case, a group of individuals, specifically three very powerful Force users: Darth Sion, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Kreia. Now, that are
not
exerting their own will upon the Force. Sion is using the Force to keep himself alive. Nihilus is using the Force to suck the life out of the entire galaxy, essentially, like Ace mentioned earlier. Darth Nihilus is essentially the Star Wars equivalent of Galactus from Marvel. And then you have Darth Kreia, who is the betrayer. She's the Lord
Treya.
of Betrayal. Treya. She's, or Kreia, Treya.
Trey is her Darth name.
Yeah,
Kreia is
Treya
her-
is her Sith name. They are trying to exert their will upon the Force in very destructive means, which is not the will of the Force. The will of the Force is not to destroy, but to, in fact, create and encourage the creation of more life to make itself continue on. The
not
Force is neither, in essence, the Force is neither is neither good nor evil. It simply is.
right. Not
And
to
This is where. Go ahead, Josh.
not to get into this kind of a discussion, but the Force is a lot like the Christian God, or how many Christians.
well,
No,
actually, that's
no.
not far off from what George wanted. He wanted to introduce the concept of God, but without being an entity that actually, because there is no burning bush, for example, in Star Wars. No one speaks directly to the Force, and it makes you wonder: is the Force a being, or is it, since it's an energy field, is the will made up from the subconscious of the living things that exist within the universe? And that's why there's both a light side and a dark side. There's a light side that wants life to prosper, to continue itself, but the dark side is just the dark side of living
Right.
human sentient life's nature. They're darker halves, like our id, so to speak.
But there's
Like
also the father,
that gets
son, daughter from Mortis.
that's a whole other thing, because that came later.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
whole other dynamic in and
True.
of itself. The father, son, the daughter of Mortis. That's a whole other conversation, and that's a conversation I can go a lot into because I'm using it as part of the basis for my version of the sequel trilogy, at least part of it. Um, I don't. Okay, both of you know I did go to seminary. I do have a degree and almost a full master's degree in theology, Christian theology,
I'm a Bible
and
thumper myself.
philosophy. I don't subscribe to the idea of this idea that the Force is likened unto the Christian God, or God. Period. In the real world,
Yeah, there's
because
similarities but differences.
I would look at it. This is the only ways I would a parallel between God as a Christian or as a Jew or as even a Muslim would see it, and
Religions.
the Force in the Star Wars universe. It does have a conscience. It does have a will, and it does have in a matter of speaking, a purpose for all sentient, nice, but I want to specify this, all sentient life. But I don't see the Force as a creative or a creator being, if you follow me.
Well, yeah, because how
It
could it
doesn't
create if it's created by life? How did the life get there to begin with?
exactly. That's where the similarities end. Anything in terms of drawing an analogy between the Force and Star Wars and God.
Hey, I
But
should probably get going because I kind of want to be in bed in about 20 minutes because it's
okay,
like 9:40 for me. I need to be in bed by 10 because I have to work at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. So
Fair
okay.
enough.
Well, Josh, that's fine, bud.
y'all have a good night.
You as well,
Josh,
Josh.
be you too, bud. Good to
Peace
see you,
out.
pal. Appreciate you being here tonight. So, you have a good one. So, not exactly the direction. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Not exactly the direction I was expecting to go with
No, I
Kotor
get
2, but in the same vein, not a bad conversation by any stretch.
you. Yeah.
The Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Ace.
I was gonna say not to if you were trying to shift gears back into the game. I'm not. I don't want to continue to
No,
perpetuate the
no, we
point,
can, we
but
can.
like someone who is a Bible thumper himself, I can see similarities between like say the Force and what is described in the scriptures as the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost, depending on what your denomination is. But I'd be
Mhm.
a liar if I did not see some similarities between like say Buddhism or Hinduism, like because in some parts of Star Wars there is some aspects of say reincarnation, like there is in Hinduism, but there is a lot of
Yes.
Buddhist aspects as well that George consciously contributed because he studied anthropology before going to film school, and that's
Mhm.
partially what influenced the creation of the Force was basically seeing like all the similarities between mythology and world religion and how it relates to us as people, and that's why he
Hmm.
wanted to take the concept of God and try and make it as like a unknowable entity, like that's not really a person but a force in Star Wars. And he also got the
Yeah.
term the Force from things like life force from the primitive cultures and so forth, and also
Mhm.
a little bit from a avant-garde film that he was a big fan of called 2187, which he was a fan of when he was in film school. It influenced some of his early student films like Electric
Mhm.
Labyrinth, THX 1138, which became his first theatrical film when he remade it.
Yeah, great movie,
Hi- yeah,
honestly.
highly underrated science fiction film.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah,
I think I need to do a review of that someday.
yeah,
Really do. I need.
I'll join you for that. I'll join you for that because I want to bash the prequel hating idiots that bash on George Lucas, who's like, oh yeah, George Lucas is a hack. Wait, he had 2 movies before Star Wars? I didn't know that. I've never seen him, but I know they prove that he's a hack. Shut up, Plinkett zombies.
Yeah, tell me about it. As far as Kotor 1 or Kotor 2 goes, it's the one thing I will come back to with Kotor 2 is, as Kreis said it, there was no grand villain. There was no massive battle to be fought. The journey was the point. The journey was you to cultivate your connection or the destruction of the force.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more the gameplay, they did make some advancements and they were very good advancements from KOTOR 1 to KOTOR 2. We got additions of new force powers and so on. But I think the thing that sticks with people about KOTOR 2 is more so the story. It's more so the connections between certain characters from the Exile
I agree.
and Kreia and of course HA-47. You absolutely cannot go wrong. Yeah, Septic Stream, you're right. KOTOR 1 felt like a more conventional Star Wars game. KOTOR 2
Agreed.
kind of swung for the fences. I'll
KOTOR
drop.
2.
Yeah, go ahead, Ace. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say KOTOR 2 is probably I think one of the best examples of a deconstruction storyline. Like, and to my knowledge, the best in the video game format, because it actually does what Ruin Johnson wanted to do with, subvert expectations, and it actually means it, because it does it in an environment that is completely separate from the movies you love so much, but it plays with the lore, and it's not so much, it is deconstructing it, but it actually is deconstructing with a purpose, like making you ask questions about the Jedi and the Sith, and saying, like, it might be some people with good intentions, but do the ends justify the means, so on and so forth, and does it perpetuate the cycle, things like that, and just saying, like, this is madness, don't you think about it?
And and here's the thing: it does present something that I do address in my own fan fiction. The great schism in the Force wielder order. I address this directly in my fan fiction, but here in KOTOR 2, we see what the outcome, or rather, we see a outcome of what the grand schism between the adherents of the Force, the ancient primordial Jedi, different, same pronunciation, different spelling.
Jedi.
Jedi, yeah. This is what could have happened if they had gone too far. The guy who wrote KOTOR 2 wrote Fallen Order. That does not surprise me, Soul Assassin. That's
Chris
why it's so
Avalon?
good.
I did not know Chris Avalon did Fallen Order, but that actually makes sense.
Well, if you think about it too, a lot of the themes in Jedi Fallen Order are echoed, or well, reverse it. A lot of the themes are
In Fallen Order are already in
are
KOTOR 2.
echoed from KOTOR 2. What does it mean for a Jedi to turn their back on their calling or their duty? And here we see not only what the Grand Schism has done to the Force, it's actually wounded the Force, but it's also wounded all other Force wielders in turn, and they've had to the Force the Jedi Order has been crippled. We see just how far and how broken the ancient Jedi Order has become in this portion of Star Wars canon. The Force is broken in a sense. And it takes one Jedi who turned their back on the Jedi to bring it back to where it should have been in the first place, where the Force is no longer looked at in terms of light and dark, but as a unified whole. That's a theme I carry on in my own story, the unity of the Force. And I do use the characters of the father and the son and the daughter. I drew a lot of ideas from old expanded universe lore for my story. And KOTOR 2 was a part of it. Because
Great read.
I'm still trying to get it finished. I'm trying to get switched to a format as a script.
The part you sent me.
Once I get it all edited down to a script, I'm going to send it back to you. But not to get off on a big tangent here.
Yeah.
KOTOR 2 and KOTOR 1 are a unified whole as a story. But KOTOR 2 swings for the fences in telling a broader narrative and an unconventional narrative. I'll draw a comparison, and I'll say this briefly, between a pair of movies from the 80s I love, and granted they're very cheesy and somewhat dated. But if you look at the two Conan movies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, you look at the first Conan movie, the Conan the Barbarian, it is a very unconventional story in terms of its themes, in terms of the structure of the film, and in terms of the performances as well. Now look at Conan the Destroyer, a more atypical fantasy adventure movie. But Conan the Barbarian is regarded by a lot of people as the superior of the two. Conan is a thief, someone we would not root for. And he works for people that are not necessarily above board themselves. With KOTOR 2, a lot of the characters that you interact with are rather unsavory characters. I mean, you've got Mira, who's a thief. You've got Ayn Rand, who's a Jedi killer. You've got Goto, who is a borderline psychotically programmed droid that has grown a massive galactic criminal empire. There are aspects of it free to play that are a little unconventional, but I will agree with you on those points. Yes. Well, he gets by in the world as a thief, but yes, he is on revenge quest, and in a way, it is a hero's journey. I would agree, but there are some aspects of Conan the Barbarian that are not as conventional as, say, other fantasy movies or anything of the time or even after. And to address your comment, Soul Assassin, no, I like Red Sonja. It's cheesy, it's corny, it's not horrible. I've watched it a handful of times when I was younger, but I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Ace.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, since we were talking about Conan briefly, I was going to say for people that like Conan but kind of might have mixed thoughts on the movies and maybe want to check out some more material that aren't the original books that were the basis, check out the Marvel Comics Conan series and also their Savage Sword of Conan from Marvel. I recommend the ones written by Chuck Dixon, and who also is a streamer here on YouTube as well. He's done some great streams, and he's written some Conan books himself. Siege of the Black Citadel is available right now on Amazon, I believe, in trade paperback and digital. Just giving him a little shout out because he's been cool enough to read some of my questions for his stream. So I just thought give him a shout out. He's the guy who co-created Bane, the Batman villain. But
yeah, and free to play. All your points are, I'm not going to say are invalid. They are. I mean, there are the movies that have dealt with the main character is a thief. The Ocean's movies, I love those. Ant-Man, yeah, he's an ex-con, obviously. But getting off track here, getting back on topic.
Han Solo's an ex-con.
Yeah. So, but with the characters that you have in KOTOR 2, a lot of them are not the type of people you necessarily want to associate with. I mean, even some of the Jedi. I mean, you want to talk about an extremely unsavory character, Atris.
Exactly.
Atris is supposed to be a decent, upstanding Jedi, and yet she's surrounded an entire chamber by nothing but Sith holocrons.
She's a Sith in denial, essentially.
Yeah, she pretty much is. Atris is a Sith in. She is a Sith, but she hasn't taken a Sith name. When you surround yourself with that much darkness, what do you think is going to happen to you? And, and one of the more chilling sound effects or anything from Kotor 2 is when you're in that chamber with Atris and you hear all of the Sith speaking through their holocrons.
And they're speaking
Yeah,
ancient tongue, I believe, if I remember correctly.
yeah, they were speaking in the ancient Sith tongue. So, and sorry, Ferris, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, buddy. I think you had brought up a comment. Let me scroll back up here just for a second. I know you're in here, bud. I saw you a minute ago. Oh, there you are. What's Ambassador? I never had a chance to play the games because it's exclusive Xbox, Windows, iOS, and Nintendo Switch. Ferris, if nothing me or Seth and me or Ace or Josh have said tonight would have not enticed you to go play either one of these games, I don't know much more else to say, bud. You need to figure out a way to play either KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 or both.
Yeah, because watching only gives you so much, but because playing's a different beast, you could, probably have a similar experience from someone who's playing the first KOTOR 2. There's so many layers. It's like Jerzuka says, it's a much more intricately made clock than people realize.
It really is. I mean, even as George said as well, it's like poetry. They rhyme. There's rhythm to both games. There's rhyme to both stories in both games, but at the same time, there are stark differences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get the revelation. Go. Sorry.
No. Finish your point first.
Okay. You get the revelation in KOTOR 1 that you are in fact Revan. You can choose from there which direction you want to go. Do you want to revert to the Sith Lord? Or if you've gone the Paragon path, do you want to continue on that path and see where it carries you? With KOTOR 2, you quite literally can stay in the gray. Or, okay, you can stay in the middle. You don't have to be either the Paragon and you don't have to be the Darksider. You can choose to be right there in the middle. The interesting thing is, if I remember correctly, it's on Korriban because you do get a chance to go back to Korriban, and you go down below the surface of Korriban, and there is a tomb or something that you can go into, and you see a series of flashbacks where. But here's the interesting thing: you have to be I think it's either you have to be Paragon Jedi or you have to be full dark side Sith or anything to get in. If you are still gray, if you're still in the middle, you can't get into that extra dungeon or that extra tomb.
Yeah, he's right.
So that for me is one of the tomb of Ludo Kresh. Thank you, Soul Assassin. Yeah.
But say what I was trying to get at. I didn't mean to cut you off, but what I was trying to get at before is Free to Play said earlier that he says that Clone Wars episode was a mistake. I assume he's referring to the Mortis arc with the son, the daughter, and the father. And when you were talking about like how you'd like use different aspects like that, and the old Jedi Order from the expanded universe, and I was just going to say that from that episode, I have some issues with it personally. But what I like about it is how it foreshadows later events. Obviously, Anakin accidentally kills the daughter, and then he has to kill the son, and much like how he kills the Jedi and then destroys the Sith, so on and so forth. Yeah. And, bringing balance, like the father thought he would bring balance to his children, but, ended up killing them both. And then, he does the same thing later on with the Force by killing the Jedi and the Sith factions.
Yeah. And I'll answer your question here. Yeah, Ferris, we're talking about LucasArts era, Star Wars gaming, not the current era where it's half a dozen other Studio's doing everything. So, and to the chat, Ironclad Granite. Iron, good to
My
see you.
man. How you doing,
Let's see.
Granite?
We could have foreshadowing done better without gods, especially since that came out after Kotor. Free to play, that's true, but at the same time, I have to admit, the Mortis arc is one of my favorites from the Clone Wars series. I think it adds an added dimension to the nature of the Force, something I actually incorporate into my own story, and I'll be incorporating it a little bit further as I'm writing parts 1 and 2 of my trilogy. But for me, the Mortis arc, I think, was a nice addition. As in the same with the World Between Worlds. And yes, for those of you who might be wondering, have I seen any clips of Ahsoka? Yes, I have. Have I seen the clip from the most recent episode 5? Yes, I have. And was I as blown away as a lot of other people were? Yes, I was. And am I eventually going to watch Ahsoka? Yeah, I probably will. I had intention to watch Ahsoka, but right now we don't have a subscription to Disney Plus due to varying reasons and everything I'm not going to go into here. It's not important. But yeah, I am eventually going to watch Ahsoka. Let's see. Especially since that came out after KOTOR, additions aren't virtues. No, additions aren't necessarily virtues, but additions aren't always a negative. So. But, as far as I'm concerned with the narrative that was told in KOTOR 2, it was something that gave you a lot to think on after you were done playing. And I think, whereas with KOTOR 1, you beat the bad guy, you either save the Republic or you destroy the Republic. That's pretty much the long and short of it. I think, at least for me, it was a more philosophical story, if that makes sense. Yeah, free to play. I'm aware additions aren't always negative, but you argue the Morris arc was good because it added to Star Wars. Yes, I like the idea of having the universe broadened. I don't want it to be just one little cluster of an idea. I want that idea to be expanded upon. Like midi-chlorians being added to the Force, for me, was not a massive issue. I didn't have a huge freak out when Qui-Gon Jinn mentioned it to a young Anakin in The Phantom Menace. I want
Because
more
you're not a
lore.
mentally stunted 20-year-old.
No, I'm not even a mentally stunted 50-year-old either. I like the ideas that are presented in the video games, like KOTOR and KOTOR 2. I don't see the Morris beings as being contradictory. Just as much as I don't see a Force user having the ability to rip the life out of an entire planet being as contradictory. If the Force is as powerful as it's portrayed to be, then why couldn't a person that's Force sensitive attain that level of power? Now, granted, it wasn't a power, it was a hunger. It was something he couldn't necessarily control because he became too greedy and wanted to amass too much power. It was a curse for him. It was not a gift. The same is true of Darth Sion. Darth Sion used the Force to keep his own deformed and decaying body going when it finally when he should have just accepted death like any Jedi or any Force wielder would have. but instead he chose to use the Force to his own destructive ends.
Yeah, both Nihilus and Scion are basically representatives of the Sith's ultimate goal, power and will to power, but they're both slaves to it. Like Nihilus is slave to his hunger for more power, and Scion is his slave to will to power because he's willing himself to keep staying alive, but he's in constant pain because of it, and Nihilus is in constant hunger.
Yeah. The Force was a field made by living things. It was demonstrable, and no one held as a god, sides of which were used, not people. My belief is that the Mortis beings at one time may have never existed. I believe, at least this is my own theory and something I've incorporated into my own writings, that the Father, the Son, and the Daughter came into being when the adherents or the practitioners of the Force started to see the Force in spectrums of light and dark, or even neutral. The Father being balance, the Son being the darkness, the Daughter being the light. There may have been a time the Morris beings never did exist. But as more people became aware of the Force and were able to exercise varying degrees of control over it or attain abilities from it, they began to prescribe a philosophy to it. You have to remember that there was a time in the ancient Jedi Order or Jedi Order that the Force and the dark side were referred to as Ashla and Bogan. Those essentially could be the names for the daughter and the son, whereas the father has no name because he is the Force as it's meant to be. Balance.
And one thing to keep in mind is that Lucas always kind of considered any expand universe material to not be part of, like, as good as the expand universe is. Lucas himself always considered it like not part of his story. He would try and make sure that, okay, this is fun, you can have here, but it's just not as important as what I've created, so on and so forth. And that, because it's some of it isn't stuff that he would create, but he made sure it still followed the rules of his world. That basically, this is how the Force works, so on and so forth. This is how light speed works, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm of the mind that the theory that the father, the daughter, and the son, they're not embodiments of the Force or anything like that, but they're just merely Force wielders, but they kind of, as Force wielders, misunderstand what bringing balance to the Force means. Because a lot of people, they believe that bringing balance to the Force means that Anakin will, make sure there's an equal footing between the Sith and the Jedi, and that's why Obi-Wan and Yoda are the only two, like the main two Jedi still alive after Order 66, and the main two Sith is Anakin and the Emperor. But reason I don't believe that myself is because George Lucas, the guy who created Star Wars, says bringing balance to the Force is destroying the Sith. And he said that in a bonus feature on the Revenge of the Sith DVD in 2005. He says that refers to both the Emperor and himself. So the whole Chosen One prophecy, like the Jedi might have seen that, oh, there is a chosen one that will destroy the Sith, but they didn't know how he would destroy the Sith. It might have been the Force's will that Anakin destroy the Jedi and the Sith, because the Jedi did become corrupt with the Republic's politics. And I think that was the path after Qui-Gon was killed. If the Qui-Gon had not been killed, Anakin would be given the right type of training and that he needed, from the proper master. He would have stayed on the light side, destroyed the Sith, and over a long period of time recreated the Jedi Order. Because I think Anakin, as the chosen one, would have been, like, with time and training and mastery, would have been the right one to become the Grand Jedi Master, to reforge the Jedi Order as it should be, according to the Force's will, following the will of the Force. But sadly, since he became a Sith, that did not happen. And that, that basically what Anakin should have gone down was left to Luke. And Luke, basically reforging the Jedi Order into something familiar but new is basically an application of Krea's philosophy come to light.
Yes.
Basically a synthesis of aspects of the Jedi and Sith, but the good aspects with what good there is to
Yeah.
the Sith.
Well, here's the thing. They're in expanded universe lore and lore that people have made up for themselves, or anything that has been attributed to the expanded universe. There have been Jedi that were seemingly good, decent. I mean, they were still adherents to the dark side, but they didn't use their powers to harm people.
Yeah, and that's why I think, like there was, I'm not sure if it was in the expanded universe, then I think I've heard it in the new canon, but Qui-Gon himself did not see the dark side as a way of using the Force. He did not see
Mhm.
light and dark as two sides of the same coin. He saw the dark side as rust on the coin. Because that's all it is. Like the dark side is just using the Force in a negative, selfish way. It's basically twisting the Force to your will. And the
Yeah.
dark side, basically leads to a lot of death and destruction. And what is the Force? It's an energy field created by life. So what's the dark side of the Force? Using this energy field to create destruction, destroy life. And the Sith, lead to things like a massive space station that destroys planets. That hurts the Force. So they're like, yeah, we're not having the Sith faction here. We can't have this. This hurts us in the long term. It wants life. It wants to live like human nature.
Yeah. Well, free to play, here's the thing. Ultimately, you're not pulling us away from our discussion on KOTOR, because this all does tie back into KOTOR 2 specifically. It ties back into Krea's motivations for the exile, for the general. She wants the general to turn their back, and I use there because whether it's a man or a woman is ultimately not necessarily important. The general, the exile, is the catalyst for the reforging or the destruction of the Jedi completely and utterly. Or the general may go off to find Revan and leave the other force sensitive people that he came in contact with, they came in contact with, to reform the Jedi Order and allow it to carry forward into the future. That's the great thing about KOTOR 2. Despite all the bugs that are prevalent or were prevalent when it was originally released, the core of the game itself still holds together and holds together well. It is a journey of self-discovery for not just one character but many characters, and you discover these characters through the dialogue that when you're able to interact with them, with Beodur, with Mira, with Atten Rand, with the Handmaiden, with the Disciple, even with the droids, with HK-47 and with Godo. There's, Krea said it perfectly. It wasn't about some grand plan. It was about the journey, about rediscovering yourself and finding these other Force sensitive beings in the galaxy so that the Jedi could potentially endure. And obviously, we know that the Jedi do endure into the future. Granted, we know what happens to the Jedi in the prequel trilogy and all the other material that was released during those years and even now. We started the stream off tonight to discuss these two games that we, as Star Wars fans and just fans of great gaming in general, love and have loved for 20 some odd years now. Because if I remember correctly, the original KOTOR came out in 08, wasn't it?
2003, actually, because KOTOR
2003.
2, yeah, KOTOR 2 was 2004 because they rushed it to be out for the Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, that's right. So 20 years. 20 years we have lived in a world where these two games have existed. 20 years we have lived in a world where these two games have thrilled us with their gameplay, fascinated us with their characters, and it is a testament to the passion of many minds, game designers, dialogue writers, story writers, voice actors, everything across the board. These games are a monument to what a great Star Wars game could be. They are quite literally, except for maybe one or two other games, they are the benchmark for what a great Star Wars game should be. That's why we love them, whether you're a Star Wars fan or not. You can just be a fan of great video games. KOTOR and KOTOR 2 deserve their spot on that list of great video games, regardless of the franchise they're attached to. Because the characters are compelling, the story is timeless, and regardless of the graphics, we're still captivated by these characters. We're still captivated by these stories. One story about a Jedi who went down the wrong path, or so we think. And here's one other thing we haven't had a chance to discuss: Krea's perspective on Revan. Did Revan truly fall, or did he simply take the path that no one else had the strength to take? That's one other thing we have not had a chance to touch on here tonight.
Good
Krea
point.
brings up a very pertinent point about the character of Revan. Did Revan, and I'm quoting her, so to speak, did Revan truly fall? Or did he take the path that no one else, no Jedi, had the strength to take themselves? My personal opinion on this, no. Revan did not fall. Revan was corrupted, yes. But Revan stood up for what was right to save life. As ill-informed as he might have been, he did the right thing.
And it does kind of make you call into question like how Revan felt. Like in the first game, we find out, oh, Revan like it kind of like might have fallen during the events of the Mandalorian Wars, but then KOTOR 2 kind of makes you question, like, because you think, well, we're hearing it from secondhand accounts from people that might have been his opponent of Revan, such as Candace, or people who served under Revan, such as Karth and so forth. But then with Krea, who was Revan's own teacher, his first and last teacher, she says, did he fall, or was he always true to himself? Did he fall, or did he make some moral shortcuts so that he could achieve his goals? Because he realized there's a larger threat. We have to get the galaxy ready to face this larger threat, and we have to beat this extension of them now so that we can ready ourselves even quicker and take the fight to them before they bring it to us and we're severely outclassed. We have to be ready for this. And you wonder, was it during, because like even from her, because you think, how much of the truth is she telling? Because based on KOTOR, we see visions of him in the past when Malak says, going into the hidden temple on Dantooine and the Jedi Enclave, he's like, we can't go back from here on out. Basically finding the first of the star maps that lead to the Star Forge. And we find out later on, no, it wasn't really finding out the Star Forge that led them down the path of the dark side, because they do come back, but it was, finding the Sith Triumvirate Temple and Revan reading these ancient Sith texts and holocrons that really changed his perspective. Or was it him finding out, oh, there is a true Sith still out there, and getting ready for that? Like, I have to basically become this type of evil tyrant in order to defeat this evil tyrant. And like HK-47 said, he wasn't really trying to fight the Republic. His real enemy was the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Krea said something very pertinent as well. The Jedi is the heart. The Republic is the shell around the heart. Regardless of the form it may take, the Jedi will endure. The Republic may rise and fall, but the Jedi will always endure. And here's the thing: free to play. or that could just have been a shortcut in terms of character design. It might have been easier for the game designers to do it that way.
Possibly.
Yeah. So that to me is a small thing, but at the same time, it is what it is. And the Soul Assassin brings it up here. KOTOR isn't considered the best Star Wars game for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a
Totally different.
handful. There is only a handful of games in the Star Wars universe that are considered the best. KOTOR is one of them. KOTOR 2 is a distant second or third. The original Battlefront, the very first Battlefront. I'm not talking about for the newer consoles. I'm talking about the first Battlefront. Is one of the greatest Star Wars games because it gave Star Wars fans the chance to do what we'd always dreamed of doing. To be in that space battle above the first and second Death Star. To be there on the surface of Hoth, flying a snow speeder, taking out AT-ATs. And then KOTOR 2, or not KOTOR, Battlefront 2, up the ante. Didn't give us just ground battles, but gave us space battles, expanded the type of vehicles we could use.
And we also can't forget about the Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy games.
No, we cannot. Now, Grant, I've never played them, but I've heard nothing but good things about
Jedi Outcast. Academy is a sequel spinoff, but basically Outcast is the final of the what I call the Kyle Katarn trilogy. You have Star Wars Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast.
Yeah.
I don't know why they changed the title so much, but it is what it is.
Free to play, I'll definitely have to go check out some of your playthroughs. So, and I appreciate you being here tonight, bud. So, I'll bring up Forrest Murphy's comment here. BF1 was on another level. Yeah, Forrest, you're not wrong. Not to mention, it gave us a sneak preview of what Kashyyyk might have looked like, and I'll be the first to admit, I spent many hours on Battlefront 2 on the Kashyyyk map as either a Republic or a clone trooper or a rebel sniper blasting battle droids or stormtroopers to Kingdom Come. Headshot after headshot after headshot after headshot. I was like, this just feels so good. Super Star Wars for Super Nintendo was the original Rage Quit game.
They actually have a PlayStation Network remaster. Well, not a remaster, basically digital version of the first game, but not for Empire or Jedi, which frustrates me. And I think I can't even get past the friggin' sandcrawler level in this game, and they don't even have the sequels to give me motivation to keep playing.
Free to play. Pleasure having you here tonight, and hope to see you again soon. So, you have a good night. And I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up here as well, because we went longer than I planned on, but not
almost twice as long.
Thing. That's what she said.
I can't think of a good retort. Well, I can, but I don't feel like saying it.
Okay, then don't.
I won't.
Okay. Well, anyways, folks, thank you all for being here tonight. And there's been a lot of people in the chat, and I appreciate you all being here, whether you're a new face or a familiar one. I hope you all, those of you here live or those that catch us on the replay, I hope you enjoy the discussion between me and Ace and Josh and the chat, of course. I do want to let you all know I will be back live sometime this coming week. I'm not sure which day as of yet, but I know I'm a few days behind because obviously my birthday was just this past Thursday, but I do have I'm going to consider this like the preamble for my birthday reviews. Got some good reviews coming up and everything. something a little modern, a little ultra retro. This is going to be doing a series of reviews on a series of sci-fi films that I either grew up watching or I have loved as since I was a kid. Be sure to check out my social media and everything on on Instagram and Twitter. When I get those set up and post and get ready to go live. The movies I'm going to be covering is Starship Troopers, the original 1950s War of the Worlds, the original 1950s The Day the Earth Stood Still, and a personal favorite of mine. Of course, these are all personal favorites of mine. Forbidden Planet, starring Leslie Nielsen and Walter Pidgeon, and the great granddaddy of all movie robots, Robbie the Robot. Which, fun fact, you actually see in another 80s classic, Gremlins. So, but that all being said, folks, you all have a great night. I will see you all next time. And until next time, stay ambassadorial. That means be honest, be true to yourself. Pull no BS. If you do all those things, you'll always have a place. The ambassadorial wing. Good night,
Peace.
everybody.
Let's be friends.
I have not.